Good morning, everybody. This is the edge that I hope really puts you over in both professionally and to pass your exam. You may have noticed there's a lot of buzz in the world about AI. I'm going to give you my whole full take on where we stand right now, at least from a simple network professional's take. I can't tell you everything, but as a simpleton network, because I've gone to a lot of conferences this year where that were all like PhDs and they're talking about various models, and I'm like, I know how to plug in the wire, but I'm actually probably a little bit more and I'm probably a lot more aligned with what my audience needs. I've discovered using originally ChatGPT and Bard before it became Gemini, Google's Bard, that you could make practice exams that are far better than any other exam for any of my things. So whether it's CASSP or C-RISC or CASM, whatever, there's always that time when you realize this isn't the real test. This is this guy's opinion, and I think he's wrong, you know. And so like with the CASM, the ISACA has an official, like make comments here. And I make comments about the practice question. I've never heard back. My class and I all think the answer should be D. We think you're hallucinating. With these guys, I think the answer should be D. You will argue with these things and you're going to win a few. They're going to go, especially if you have two of them. So if you use ChatGPT and now Gemini or whatever, or now Meta, whatever you're using, Copilot, and you go, hey, Gemini thinks the answer is D. I think it's B. And there's times when they're going to say, you're right. No, according to the ISACA or the whatever, the ISO thing, according to RFC 2828, whatever, you're right. A lot of times you're wrong. And either way, well, I'm wrong. I'll just take ownership. I go, I guess I am wrong, but I get smarter each time. So no matter what, I ask you to, in history, we're rolling out AI in a big way. We're like training, domesticating animals or whatever. We need to train them. No, you're not allowed to go there. You know, don't try to eat daddy's food. So I always tell the younger cat, my older cat doesn't try to eat my food, but we have to train them. But at the same time, we're getting a reward. And the best reward is that you're going to be able to, one, pass your exam, two, be able to go into a workforce where this is where more and more increasingly you're interfaced to how to work. I don't care if you're a doctor today. If you're trying as a doctor to see if this new medication conflicts with the other 35 things that Granny's on, you better be using AI or else it's negligence, in my opinion. So here we are. We're in a great time in history here. All right. The name is misleading. The intelligence is real. It's like looking through a telescope. Wait a second, that's not a real eye. Can I trust that that really is the data you're giving me? Is this just like artificial sweetener? Is this going to give me poison? No, give me cancer? No, the intelligence is real. The way we gather and process it is artificial. It's just really just automation. That's all it really is. Don't let's demystify it. When people give it a name like artificial intelligence, almost like, is it an alien arrived here? It's just advanced automation. Now, originally, when they automated things, I in the 90s worked for Wang Laboratories, and I would automate scanning in a document, with a scanner, but you were able to then automate recognizing what letter that was. The AI started out for me in the 90s. I would train these expert systems. No, that's the letter A. And that's the expert system. After a while, you train it, and finally it goes, well, you never showed me that font type before. And eventually, make a good guess. But the machine learning is when they start learning on their own. When AlphaGo Zero, or actually AlphaGo, played the game of Go against the world's best chess player, they didn't train it on how to play Go. They said, this is the rules of the game. Go play, go figure it out. Watch people play. And it taught itself. Now, that's not the same exactly as what ChatGPT and all these new guys are doing. They're large language models. What they did was take large sets of language. knowledge of all the words that go together. Many AI people thought this was stupid. They're like, oh, what are you going to get out of this? They took all the writings, all the things you could find on the internet, every book. And then if I said something to you, it would go, I'm pretty sure this is a reasonable response to what you just asked. Because I've learned the rules of the language. And it turned out to be incredibly useful. So that's where we are today with ChatGPT. Of course, it's not just language. When I'm drawing these pictures, I said I want an elephant. It get really hard for them, that no, it's got to be in uniform. No, it's got the head of an elephant, but the body of and eventually it's not just words, it's different objects. So this is a newer term. You're not likely to hear that in the field, but oh, what did I just got my gift from Ray Kurzweil. Oh, is it gonna not blur in my background? Maybe I gotta turn my background blur off. I got a gift from Ray Kurzweil. I attended his most recent Future of AI event. He only spoke for an hour, 3 days, and he comes on for an hour at the end. I read his newest book. I reviewed it on Amazon, and I got they called it a laptop sticker. But laptops go away every 3 years. I'm putting it on the case for this thing. That's not going away for my green SG. uh, so those are a newer term, large object models, but that's when you're playing with image generation. It's not language, but it's the same basic concept. All right, now let's get back to what we're doing: governance, risk, and compliance. That whole field, while we've been borrowing words from the Greek, the whole field really started professionally with the birth of the stock market. When we first were able to sail ships around the world with the first wide area network transport vehicles. Lloyd's of London Insurance starts up, and that's the history of all the terms we use today. They really had a lot to do with the ISO, starting in like 1600, so they can get tea from China and sugar from the Americas that was like one of the major things they need to move. So they created all these things, and what really helped them was the telescope. Because if you're trying to avoid risk, being able to see 10, 100 times further, the rocks further, you make less adjustment on your ship. Not everybody you deal with the telescope very well because the data seemed artificial. So when Galileo says, "Hey, we're not really the center of the universe. We're actually not even the center of our solar system, according to the telescope." The Pope was like, "Give that to me. What if that fell into the wrong hands? It's not aligned with our values." And shut up, lock him up. Don't ever let him out again. That's really what happened. Because they didn't like the data that was coming out of it. But every ship's captain who was just a private guy, they're like, I don't work for the Pope, dude. I've got orders. Once I sail out that ship, I'm my own king. We call them, they were private shipping companies. That was basically like FedEx or the network. They were the network guys. We call them pirates today. That's really what started. So the telescope, maybe the Pope didn't think it was legal, but the pirates were like, oh no, I'm bringing telescopes, baby. It's saving lives. It's making the mission a lot more. That happened again when radio came out. When the Titanic sunk, many people heard the story, it's supposed to be unsinkable. 1912 or 1911, the Titanic goes out with 2,700 people, and it was sinkable. Hit icebergs, and it went down. And did you know radio had only come out 3 years earlier? Marconi had patented the first commercial radio in 1909. But 2 years later on the ship, because it was like the Tesla of ships, it had a radio. There was no reason, it didn't say you had to. And because of that radio, 700 people lived that never would have lived. That became the first U.S. law governing electronic communications, the Radio Act of 1912. From now on, ships will carry radios. And I don't care if there's a lot of different ways to represent the letter A. We're picking Morse code. That's how Morse code became in network on day 4 of the first presentation layer standard. Right. So these things help save lives. They mitigate risk. And today, that's where we are with AI. I'm sorry if it doesn't align with everybody's values. The Taliban's going to have a hard time going, no, it turns out men and women have actually equal amount of authority. And the Taliban, no, they don't. But I'm sorry, that's like the Pope saying you're not allowed to listen to the telescope. A lot of people are like that. But we're not going to deal with that. We're Jedi Knights in this class. We represent the common good from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. We're going to see to it that we use AI like the telescope, the radio, to help mitigate risk and make the common good a safer place. Right. Now, there are risks. The risks that everybody sees, well, one is control. I'm able to control to a degree the fires I light in my kitchen to a degree, right? I've got a stove and everything like that. We can control AI to a degree, but my stove doesn't think for itself. These AIs are actually going to take control, and we're going to talk about when that might happen. All right. But the bigger problem is not control. No ship's captain controls the ocean. So we recognize that you don't have to have control over everything. You control yourself. You control your ship. The bigger problem is bias. And whether it's northern, I usually like to say mountain people versus valley people. But bias is when for some reason the AI just decides to do favor a particular group. And if you think that any of these AIs aren't favoring, like if you don't think Copilot favors Microsoft employees, right? Do you think that Meta favors will probably treat, Zuckerberg differently than he treats you and me? So that's our problem. And these are the things. And the only way to solve this is to not have an AI that is biased toward a company or a country. Right now, they all are, except for one that's not even out the door yet. But the most famous out there is called Singularity Net, which their initiative is not just open source, so I can see the recipe, but it's fully decentralized. It's going to be the Bitcoin of AI. So. All right. So, and that's, a lot of times alignment is just, it's humans need to align. It's your fault, Pope. You need to be the one to update. If humans, we want the AI to align with my values, but you value sugar cereal. You shouldn't value sugary cereals, Larry. Actually, I don't value them anymore. And why are LLMs great for exam prompt? It's like right now, they're large language models. They have read the internet. They can read all the requirements of the exam. They're not going to be like the practice exam that you read from somebody else that thought this was right. They're going to be, no, I read the IETF. I read ISO. It's aligned. It's not. So they're much better. Do they make mistakes? Yeah. Yeah, they go with the red. And you tell them, and that's when you use the other AI. Right. So again, I started with character recognition. But we're now to where AlphaGo Zero was built after AlphaGo. AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol in the game of Go 4 games to 1. AlphaGo Zero beat AlphaGo 100 games to 0, and then told them how they did it in a language humans don't really understand. So that's right. To some degree, the AIs are having conversations we don't understand. And that means every AI, open AI agent that's on your network that your developers are doing are having conversations that we don't understand. But it's not artificial intelligence. My favorite hacker in the world is Ralph H. Mandia. He's been a great friend of mine since I got into this field over 20 years ago. And when we were talking, he goes, "Oh, I hate the word. It's just automation." And I totally agree. I said, "Dude, I've been using that phrase." He told me this like 10 years ago. I was like, "Dude, I tell you, my students the same thing." But we have to train them. Some are supposed to be fully guided. That's like the self-driving car. But right now, I prefer excuse me, I'm going backwards. Fully guided as a human has to really go. Now you go this way, go that way, go that way. Some guidance is like when you just, and a lot of times we see this in some of the all the big vendors that whether it's Azure or AWS, they have these AI containers and these various as a service that fall into your platform as a service, where you give them some guidance and you tag your data. These are phone numbers, these are HR records, and that gives them some guidance. But a totally self-guided would be able to look at all of your data and go, I know what this is. We're not there yet. We're not, just like we don't have fully self-driven cars yet. We're getting very close. So we have to reinforce them, and that's what we're doing when you play with your LLMs. When you're using your practice exams, you're going to reinforce. You go, oh, that's a great question, or something like that, and they're going to eventually now. There's a question as to when you teach it something, does it really remember it beyond that chat session? The advertisement is absolutely not. We're not using your data to train the model. Every AI expert I know thinks that's a lie. So we'll keep an open mind. But what these, whether it's a large language model or a large, the Dolly drawing images, what they are is generating new things from pre-trained data, all the words of the English language, all the sonnets, everything you could read on the internet. Literally, they cache the internet, pre-trained information, and then they get to transform it in such a way where he's got whatever a man's body but an eagle's head. So artificial general intelligence now, it seems like it's on the buzzword, so I don't have to explain it too much. But this is basically right now we have AIs that are super intelligent in one thing. That's called narrow. So we have AIs that are really good at chess, but they might not be able to play checkers. But as they learn across more domains, now it's more human. Like he knew about that too. He knew about that too. And pretty much the Turing test is if you had a conversation, say on the phone with somebody, you would not know that that's actually an AI. And Ray Kurzweil, who's thing. Let's see what my gift is. What does my sticker look like? Says that we will get it in 2029. That's the sticker. The sticker is, oh, there it is. I was going to say it's his autograph. I have his autograph. Ooh. There's the sticker. And he says that it in 2029, that's less than 5 years away, that we're going to have artificial general intelligence. And let's be honest, if it's already super intelligent in one field, the day that happens, we're not going to be equal. It's already superhuman. So just prepare. Whether it's 2029, it's very close. And most AI experts are now with him. When he first wrote his first book, was near as 2005, and most people thought he's crazy. That'll never happen. But ChatGPT changed by 2017, and people were like, "Wait, this is really doing something. This is something." And now, so what is the future of work when you get your thing? What are you going to be doing? And I like to believe they're not going to be replaced with AI. You are going to have an assistant that's going to take care of all your light work. Would you get that for me? So if you're the head developer, you ain't losing your job. But those 20 coders that work for you, bye. So I've got my friends in my band are all construction workers, and they're all we're all in our 60s, so they're all managers. They're all performance and stuff. My drummer, I said, dude, you got a team of how many people? I think he says on average he's out there doing he digs up the property. It's all the ground infrastructure work. So he lays all the plumbing work and everything that and it's in any community. He's always nearby. Well, yeah, we're doing the whole something community, and he'll have up to 20 people working for him. I said they're all going to go, and it's just going to be you. You're going to have like a bunch of transformers, trucks that are going to do it for you. So I don't believe they're going to replace us. They're going to take care of our light work. As a musician, if I don't have my drummer show up, I'll let the AI sit in and play drums, but I'd much rather have a human drummer that just still ain't there. All right, so let's go back to where we are and put it in context of governance, risk, and compliance. We know it helps us steer. And by the way, these are older graphics I did for a thing I did in DC last year. So I borrowed some of this, and I'm an old Star Trek fan. They help us steer. It's an old Greek word, right? That's it. Govern means to steer. Risk are the cliffs under the water that we need to avoid, and we can't necessarily see them ahead of time. We'll remember that they're there if we hit them once, if we took that route. But did you know that the trade winds might change and all of a sudden, the last time the wind supported us, this time the wind blew us right into the rocks. So you have to know a lot about current conditions besides just where the cliffs are. Yeah, Lloyd's Coffee House really started it. They started the process of validating just what we need to do today. You want to get certified. You're going to take your test where at some validator like um, the Pearson View, the ISC2 will give you the certification, and then you might get accredited. They believe that you're good for this mission or for a job, whatever. But it's not just the staff. That's what we talked about yesterday. Your ship has to get certified. And today, that's ISO 27001 for your organization. That's why so many exams, whether and they hint on this, but every exam wants you to know, no, it's an international thing, so you can steer in these waters, so you're trusted. And the technology on the ship. Where did you get that sail? Is that just a bed sheet? No, no, no. And that's the common criteria. So we'll talk a little bit about it. You don't need to know it for this class. For the CISSP, you definitely need to know more about that. So every product hopefully has been certified. And now I don't have to sit there and test it. It's been tested. The ISO tested it and said it's good. I just have to configure it. Actually, the only one certified in the United States, the only operating system is Red Hat Linux, by the way. Microsoft certified in Spain. I don't know what they did. They paid this cheaper. I don't know what the deal is. But we use technology to reduce the risk. It helps us govern. If I have a telescope, it's real. It's not a real eye. I understand those lenses are artificial, but the data's real. Yeah, it helps us in our detection. We know that security is about prevention, detection, and response. This increases early detection, whether it's a COVID, right? If you have a vaccine or they did cancer, oh, we detected it was still at stage 2. It's a good thing it wasn't, right? So the earlier the detection, the easier it is to respond. Right? If I see the pothole really far away, I just barely turn. But if I just see it right in front of me, I make everybody spill their coffee, right? But the goal in alignment is actually aligning people. There's a lot of my friends, a lot of my musician friends are just so weird about AI. I don't trust it, Larry. I don't trust it. I think this world's going to hell. I'm like, dude, you of all people should love AI. I don't need your opinion when I have real data. I like to say that there are 4 strings on this. I don't need your opinion. That's the quantity of data. Do you like it? Is now a good time to play? There's no quantity. That's qualitative. I need your opinion. But I don't need your opinion for this. The fundamental risks, the control problem in anything. My favorite, as an old Star Trek fan, we knew about it as Nomad. But there's in any AI research, you're going to hear it called the paperclip problem. If an AI was built to create paperclips and it goes out of control, it might start using humans as raw material to make. I'm sorry, I got to make more paperclips. Okay, I can understand that, but it's narrow. It's narrow. It's not really good at other things. I've been involved in martial arts all my life. And one thing about narrow strength we always learn is like it never comes straight at a guy. The bigger, faster, stronger guy wins. But if I could get you to think I'm coming right and I'm coming left, all bets are off. In security, that is called a side channel attack. If I try to brute force your password, it might take a long time. But if I just sniffed it out on the wire, that's a side channel. Whatever it is, whenever you didn't try to meet the math head on. So narrow AIs are going to get out of control, and they already are. In fact, the most powerful AIs in the world are military and Wall Street right now. And Wall Street AIs just go, all right, we got to make more money, got to make more money. Let's burn down more of the earth. 68% of all, just check it with Claude. I'm usually the guy I go to for most accuracy. I heard, whoops, caps lock. And he doesn't care about caps. This is just for me. I heard a statistic about 68% of vertebrae. Vertebrae. How do you spell that? On this planet, on the planet, have been killed in the last 50 years. Is this true? That's pretty sad. There's something going wrong. We can fix it. That's what we're here for. We're going to help Ellie and Griff, Finn. All right. So that is a problem. It's a real problem. But as we get to general AI, that problem's going to go away. That problem will be lessened. This is a problem that affects narrow AI. Now, control, the other one is bias. And again, that's an alignment problem. Because subjectively, somebody wanted the ukulele to play whatever 3 o'clock in the morning, even though nobody else thought that was a good time to play. That's a bias problem. We've all seen it, right? When you call it the help desk and you can't get, it's like press 1 for this. Like, well, man, your questions are too narrow. Your answers are too narrow. I've got a problem with mine thing that's outside the scope of your 5 different things. But AGI's biggest risk is lining humans. Some people just want to believe God chose us to be better, because why else would he have written, the holy text in our language? Proof, whatever. We have to represent everybody equal. We have to do the CISSP of protecting the common good. And the singularity net, Ben Goertzel is one of my favorite scientists out there, and he points out that if you make it open source and decentralized, we're not going to have these problems. It's going to mostly solve problems. Post 22, it's more like this. Can I speak to a chatbot? All right, now, what's the other future of work? I've got all these artist friends who aren't getting paid, and I'm like, dude, your data is valuable. And they go, I don't want welfare. And I go, it's not welfare, dude. People are already trading on it. Every time you go to, say, CNN or Fox News or whatever, they start collecting. These represent different sites that I blocked with my no script, but if I allowed them, they would start collecting data on me just because I went to CNN. Do you think CNN allowed these? This is the top third. There were like 50 different companies that CNN said, come on in. He's not checking. And the CNN, I'm sure, didn't let them in for free. They sold it. My data, and I didn't get a penny. I believe if we just got paid for what we're already earning other companies, well, you probably have universal. Remember, we're not like at a poor. If you shared all the world's wealth 50 years ago, we'd all be poor. The world's different. We'd all be pretty rich right now. More people. When I was a kid, we worried about people dying of starvation. Today, most people suffer from obesity than starvation. Literally. Check those stats out. So we have more than enough to go around. We need to deal with it better. And we talked about the ISO. I'm an old Star Trek guy. They're the Federation. It means equal. From Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, we're going to treat everybody, and we're going to fix it. We're going to make sure everybody can live good, and we can do this. It's going to happen. And some things from my mother: don't ever sell things you wouldn't buy. That's a basic golden rule. She was a natural general intelligence. Garbage in, garbage out. When people say, ChatGPT told me to do this, what did you ask it? And that's like the next one. Be careful what you ask for, because now you're going to start getting what you want. And you better be very careful what you wish for. It's like the monkey's paw, if you don't know that story. And talk about bias. My mother taught me you always have to learn from history. If you don't, you're going to hit the cliff again. But she always pointed out it's just his. My dad passed when I was little, so I was mostly raised by my mother, and she was very, very smart. And she said, and she also told me, and it gets rewritten by the winner of the last war, so you can't even trust your own country's history. You have to correlate it with other countries. And today with blockchain, that's going to be much, much more difficult. All right, so now how are we going to use it to pass our exam? Did anybody try it? Did anybody try? Oh, by the way, these are my musician friends. I was like, Sadhguru was questioned, what are we going to do when the AI takes over? I mean, when people, and he said, when I saw the calculator, I was like 12 years old. I said, I was looking at this thing, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, all the stuff I had to do in school, they're making me do this. Now I just got to press button. Why do I have to go to why am I have to go to school for this other stuff? I can just press buttons. I can be free to do other things. And that's what he says basically with AI. Don't get worried about it. They're taking your job. Find other things that they can't do. Trust me, there's a lot of stuff they can't do, like play music and dance or whatever. That's going to be a long time. And I say alignment's not a one-way street. It's a full duplex network. Just trying to get ChatGPT and Bard aligned or Chrome aligned. Excuse me, not Chrome, Gemini. All right, so we looked at this yesterday. We did some prompts here. Did anybody try the prompt yet? Who was that?
Yeah, I tried.
How'd it go for you?
Come again?
I'm hearing something. What did
Actually, I tried the prompt that you were given,
Well, this is the
and
main
yeah,
one.
they,
Yeah.
as I today I also cleared the domain one from the ISU to CC course.
So let me see something. I'm going to cut it, paste it again.
Did you find it effective for your use, Saksham?
Sorry.
Did you find it effective when you used it?
Definitely they were effective.
Okay, that's
Now,
good to know.
at the end, I want to show you guys probably the most useful thing you can do. Domain task all. Well, we just did domain one, so we'll keep that. All right, and all. Sorry, but you could also change it to just like 1.1, 1.2, or you could just say concept. Change it. Risk assessment. And let's just try it. Let's try it with 5 questions. Just on 5 questions.
Larry, maybe we can have the group paste the answers in the chat and have a discussion.
Oh, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, don't reveal the answer.
Oh, but it didn't give me, it's listed okay, so it did do A, B, and C, but not as a list. All right. A company is planning to launch a new online service and wants to ensure it addresses potential security risks before going live. As a security consultant, what is the first step you should recommend they take in assessing their risks? A, purchase cybersecurity insurance to mitigate potential losses. B, identify and catalog all assets related to the online service. C, install advanced firewalls and protection detection. D, train people on best practices.
Let's give it a minute.
Yeah, but I'm watching. I saw 2 people have answered so far.
Bori, do you want to give it a shot? Parvati, thanks for putting
Looks like
down.
everybody's doing B. All right, so let's try B. And we saw it's B says identify. We know that that's a keyword right there, right? The first step in risk assessment is identify. Then we would analyze, and then we would evaluate controls. And all these things, this is not even in risk assessment. That's risk treatment. This is risk treatment. This is risk. So all of these jumped from assessment, and only B is actually assessing a risk. Yeah, and it starts with identifying.
Larry,
Yes, sir.
isn't that part of the NIST specification risk assessment?
Yes, it is. Now, there are two things you might want to, there's an 830 has risk assessment and risk mitigation, or risk mitigation, they call it. It's a very old but very well respected document. The newer, probably more followed methodology gets a little more granular, 837, and it makes sure that you understand that risk assessment is three separate processes: identify, analyze, and evaluate. So yeah, but 37 is the one that really brought that to. Okay, next question. Boy, the new model really thinks this is the latest. I didn't realize I had it on the default, but it should be pretty well corrected. It's just that it takes a while to double check. I got to double check, man. I got to keep up with Claude. In the context of risk assessment, which of the following best describes a vulnerability? A, a potential cause of an unwanted incident that may result in harm. B, a weakness in a system that could be exploited by a threat. C, the likelihood of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. D, a measure of the impact if the risk materializes. And I see a few people going in there. Oh, it looks like everybody's got it. B. You didn't have the answer ready? Boy, this was the one that
It's
was
taking
called.
too long to think.
Yeah. This is the latest model. This is preview of what used to be called Q Star last year, and then it became known as Strawberry. Berry, sorry. And it's actually not that great. What it's doing is it learned something that Claude already knew how to do. Don't just like a waiter come out and go, there's your two eggs, and not look and notice. Did you notice that's a hamburger? Oh, you're right. That is a hamburger. Sorry, let me go back and get your eggs. And that's what the chat GPT, all of them were doing. Only Claude knew to look. That's not right. Let me go back. But it slows it down. It's actually generating up to 100 times more tokens. It's still thinking, all right, we're not even going to do this one. How long should this take you? Let's do the regular.
Can I say something, Larry?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick one. The questions that come up here on this AI, is it similar in level to the exams that you?
It's so similar. Every one of them. In fact, I told
Or
you
is
I
it
use
easier,
Gemini.
difficult?
No, it seemed like when I sat down for my CISSP, it looked just like what Gemini was doing for me. And it's only because I only use Gemini. So let's just paste this right to Gemini. Gemini's pretty fast. Right. Oh, I forgot to say risk assessment. Oh, but I'll show you what you can do. Watch this. Please redo. I only want questions on risk assessment. So you don't have to replug in everything for this session, whatever. I'm just being nice for this session. 5 questions, please. So once you start a chat, and as long as you stay in that same chat, it remembered what you first told it. So there we go. All right. So which of the following risk assessment techniques would be most appropriate for evaluating these risks? What risks? Oh, I didn't read the scenario. A company is considering implementing a new cloud-based customer relationship management (CRM) system. The project team has identified several potential risks associated with the implementation, including data migration issues, system downtime, and user adoption challenges. Which of the following risk assessment techniques would be most appropriate for evaluating these risks? So, data migration issues, system downtime. These could be done pretty quantitative. User adoption challenges. That sounds really hard. So quantitative, I could see if I had quantities of the exact how long it would take to migrate the data, but I don't know if we have that. Once you
Larry, let's
mention,
see what the class has to say though.
yeah,
Let's
I
see.
see them. I see them. They're picking it.
Okay, okay. Because everything is B, so I got confused with the previous one.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because of the user adoption challenges, I think only qualitative is going to work, is it? Yeah, I got to get your opinion. I need opinions. What do you guys think? So I'm going to go with, is every answer going to be B? You're not even the same.
Well, that's ChatGPT fault.
You got it. Qualitative. Okay. Why B? Well, remember, I don't know that vulnerability and penetration testing, so they should be pretty easy to rule out. You're fine with me there, Saksham?
Yes, actually, I'm
Okay,
following, but
but
I mean, quite a bit confused between the quantitative and qualitative
right,
risk assessment.
right. So back to there is a quantity of 4 strings. I don't need anyone's opinion. But what about the user adopting to the new system? Can I measure what adoption means, or do I just go, do you like it? I kind of like it. You know, I don't feel like I still like the old one. Those aren't things I could put a number. Oh, the number answer's 4. You know, there's no number for that. So qualitative means just what do you like? What do you value? Remember we did a valuation of our assets? What do you think that's worth? Value is always subjective. So, right. So if I look at, let's see what the value of that is worth right now. According
Okay,
to, you got it. It's very subjective. Yeah. All right. We'll save time on
thanks
my
for the
good time.
explanation.
So yeah. So qualitative is much better to see. What is it you don't like, Bob? I don't like the yellow background. It hurts my feelings. You know, it reminds me of a bad day. So did we give the answer? Did you give me anything here? I said my answer, but it didn't take it. Or did it? Oh, wait a minute. Did I
Thinking.
read the wrong question. Question 2. All right. You're a security consultant tasked with conducting a risk assessment for a healthcare organization. Which of the following risks would you consider be of the highest priority for mitigation? Loss of patient data due to a ransomware attack? Unauthorized access by employees to employee records by a disgruntled former employee? Denial of service attacks impacting the availability of patient records? Theft of medical equipment? This is very debatable. I don't think the medical equipment would be as high, assuming that, no, that medical equipment had uranium in it. They could build a bomb out of it. You know, maybe there is medical equipment that has stuff in there that maybe the public's not supposed to have. Denial of service on paper records. So when I'm bringing people in the emergency room right now, I can't even service them. To me, that's really scary. Unauthorized access to employee records by disgruntled, well, that stinks. I don't think it's as bad as people dying necessarily on my table. Loss of patient data. Well, that's like denial of service. Ransomware is a denial of service, I'm pretty sure. So indirectly, I could see where A leads to C. I'm going to tell it just that. Watch. And this is what you can do with an AI exam that you can't do with somebody else's. I would argue C seems correct as it addresses life safety issues now should but doesn't A also become a denial of service? I can't see I've got the boxes in my way. I'm sorry. That's what's bothering me here. Denial of service. Anyway. Wait a minute. It was answering a different. Oh.
No, it's saying C is
It was
correct
on a
answer.
different question. It's on a different question. I'm one question behind. Ever since I'm going to blame the guy that asked me to explain my. No, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm one question behind. All right. So let's just move on to the next one. Question 4. I'm sorry, guys. Larry. Let's see what question 3 was, by the way. But they didn't even tell us what the question 3 was anyway.
I think
Question.
because you didn't submit the answer, you just gave your argument. So it's
Yeah,
considered
yeah,
prior one.
yeah. All right. You are conducting a risk assessment for a new e-commerce website. Which of the following risk mitigation strategies? Somebody have a comment there? Okay. I would have picked A for that too, Cliff. Yeah. All right. So anyway, back to 4. Which of the following risk mitigation strategies would be most appropriate for addressing the risk of unwanted access to customer data? New e-commerce website, unwanted. Implementing a firewall. We haven't gotten detailed in the controls, but what do you guys think? It's risk mitigation. I actually asked it to stay on risk assessment. Yeah, the problem with B for me is I'm an encryption guy. I go, yeah, encrypt the data. That doesn't necessarily change the risk of unauthorized access if you're only doing it at rest while it's on the hard drive, because Larry could sniff it out on the wire. Data at rest versus data in transit. There's actually a third that's really hard. Data in processing. So whenever we try to protect data, we always consider 3 locations. 1, it's on a disk. 2, it's on the network. 3, it's in the computer's memory. I can encrypt it while it's on the disk. I can encrypt it while it's on the network. We usually decrypt it for memory, but that's in processing. So I don't like B because it's just at rest. Implementing a firewall, that doesn't tell me you protected the data. I don't know. I mean, I saw a couple of people, usually when you have remote access, one of the first things people want you to do is and not 2, today it's MFA, or else my wife will make fun of you. But a lot of places say 2FA. So let's say D. I think D is a pretty much best practice for any, sensitive data from a remote location. So let's not overthink the problem. Yeah. Question 5. You're conducting a risk assessment for cloud-based infrastructure. Which of the following risks would be specific to the cloud environment? Loss of physical assets due to natural disasters. Unauthorized access to data by employees. Data breaches due to vulnerabilities in the cloud provider's infrastructure. Malware infections on local workstations.
While you're thinking about this, I will say, Larry, that these questions are extremely close to even the CISSP exam.
They don't
So,
have previous understanding of what they've been doing for 20 years. They just go, I looked at the web, at the internet now. And I saw that they've read all the Reddit, coming. I had this question. They've read everything. They've read the requirements. They've read the most recent, and they really do some amazing job. Of course, they make mistakes. They make mistakes. I see some C's. One of the most common things in a cloud provider is because they're usually publicly traded. They get an audit by the SSA 18. They get American Institute of Accountants and CPAs, and they get the SOC report. They fall under a lot of regulatory requirements. They typically pretty good at least absorbing. Sorry, it's our fault if sees a problem. I mean, it could happen. Typically, the thing you look for that things are specific to the cloud environment, I think the people who work for that cloud provider. I don't know that I trust their employees. I didn't interview them. So for me, I think B is a better answer. It's a very common issue this is why we want to keep our data encrypted with our own key, right? That's called bring your own key, because I don't trust the cloud provider, whether it's man-made accidents or malicious intent, right? Cloud, bring your own key. So tell us what that means. Yeah, so to avoid just that type of issue. So I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna say that I'll take ownership of this and say it's B. Ooh. Oh, it's still hitting me. Oh, that's what was going on in the other one. No, it didn't. It actually moved in. No, never mind. This is just a different problem altogether. Well, Parvati, you thought it was D. Let me see. That would be the other side of it. And it's specific. It's the only other answer that would have made sense. Let's see. Huh. For the last question. There are several best practices and issues related to the idea that outsourcing to a cloud prevents your ability to screen employees. Therefore, B seemed appropriate. Okay, one more just to dig. We're about to break here but I just can't give up. Sometimes Larry just can't give up. I'm actually going to now start naming names. I believe it is a concept, it is that I believe B is an important concept for those of you who may go on, those preparing for the ISC2 CCSP exam. Ah, now that you bring it up, Larry. Okay, okay. I didn't mean to go ahead of you guys. You're here for CC, but when you're taking the certified in cloud, that's one of the issues is that in a cloud environment, you don't trust the employees. And so and then the countermeasure is to encrypt your data with bring your own key. No problem. No problem. To summarize, no problem. To summarize, for my students, for my CC students, the counter measure for the problem above, was bring your own key for encryption. All right, anyway. Any questions on how to use these guys as your assistants? And you see sometimes, well, actually this time I think it was all Larry. Any mistakes made today was mostly me, except for this guy just took forever.
Larry,
Yeah.
so is the correct answer encryption then, is it?
No, their answer was still, they're still sticking with it. And I'm not saying they're wrong. Parvati had a good point, that you're conducting a risk assessment for a cloud base, which are the most things you'd worry about. And you may want to, because of that shared responsibility model, and you're like, hey, if there is a vulnerability in the cloud's infrastructure, we couldn't do anything about it. So this is a significant issue because I don't have the ability to change that infrastructure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was a good answer. I just was so focused on a particular issue in the CCSP. One of the content, requirements is that you understand that employees of the provider you shouldn't trust them. You didn't hire them. So you're just going to encrypt all of your data just in case with your own key, and that's all. So, and I was too narrowly focused, too narrow. I think C is still a better answer. It's debatable. Any other questions? That my wife's been shooting me 5 texts. She knows I'm working here, but we're having a problem with the water, and she's. When you hire somebody is actually, I know somebody might have I'm going to mute everybody. You can always unmute yourself, but I have a feeling somebody didn't realize that they were. Mute all. It's not doing it anyway. Oh, there it goes. All right. So if somebody's muted and you didn't mean to be, you can unmute. When you hire a business, a cloud provider, you probably don't have access to their background checks at all. Right. That's the point. That's exactly the point. That, hey, I didn't hire you. I didn't train you. Even if it was an accident. I don't know. Dude, why is it that one guy always come in here putting his coffee on that thing? We didn't hire him. It could be an accident. But again, for this question, it could have been, it's not like how many bits are in an IP address. There's only one answer to that. What's the worst thing that could happen sometimes is debatable. And for this to be an ISO approved exam, they had to try a bunch of people that didn't work for them to take the exam and grade it on a curve. So if this was a real exam question and 30% of the people thought the answer was B, this would only count for about 70% of a point, something like that. Awesome. All right, let's take a break and I'm gonna find out what's got my wife so excited about the water guy and what I need to do and what steps I need to prepare. So 20 minutes. Actually, let's get back at 12:20 if you can, and please play around with some prompts too if you got time to do that. I'm going to pause the recording. All right. So, welcome back. And in the first domain, among other things, understanding the various principles of security and topics, we talked about risk assessment. And we talked about identifying our assets, the threats, the vulnerabilities. We looked at the likelihood and the impact that some threat could actually do something and cause damage. We looked at controls, and we came up with ways to prevent these problems as best we could. But we can't prevent all problems. I can't prevent all fire. It's a great analogy to all of security, to AI. So what's important is I have a plan in case there is a fire. Now I've had these plans in case there's a fire since I was little. I've never had a fire. Thank you. Thank you. Many people do. You know, on average in the United States, somebody dies in a fire every 2 hours. Around the world, it's hard to get those statistics, but we think it's something like every 5 minutes. So let's not be that guy. So what we do is we have a plan just in case. And that's always about detection and response. Business continuity is the umbrella term to describe we need to keep running no matter what. I don't need an excuse. But it was a mistake. I don't need an excuse. Somebody broke in here. Somebody cheated. Whatever. I don't need an excuse. I need to keep going. It includes disaster recovery, which is accidents and natural disasters, and incident response, which is what my wife does. So I better be careful. No, she that's all about man-made intentional. When I first started in this business, incident response people were so often obsessed with their people using their internet access in ways they shouldn't. You know, there's not even, it's not work. He's going to whatever adult sites, whatever it is. There was a lot of inappropriate usage problems. By 2005, I would say, and it's not just me, I check these metrics, it's almost all outsiders. People like my wife have no time to deal with insiders abusing. They are constantly under attack. You're constantly under attack. If you look at your firewall's outside interface and take a look at what's hitting that your firewall mostly is preventing, so you don't care. But you're constantly under attack. There's somebody, it's like somebody's walking down the street all day long, knocking on your door or checking to see if your windows are locked every day. Let me show you something too, to put things in perspective. We maintain a list of the vulnerabilities at the MITRE database. I find them a little hard to navigate. MITRE. The MITRE database is all the common vulnerability, CVE, the Common Vulnerability and Exposure Database, and they identify, define, catalog, disclose vulnerabilities. I find it a little easier to navigate at the National Vulnerability Database, where they filter some things. Unfortunately, they're not always getting all the vulnerabilities, but it is a little easier to search. And if we just take a look at today, I'm not even going to put a filter. What did we discover this morning here, October 24th? Give me my search. They often are very, very busy. So I'll just say search with no criteria. And just today, we discovered, oh my gosh, we're going back yesterday. This is probably one of the problems of MITRE. Probably had 25 vulnerabilities that wasn't reflected. But just yesterday, and somebody is writing scripts. There are people watching this writing, hey, I wonder if I could break into my neighborhood this way. Could I break into somebody this way? So they write all these things. And every day, you're constantly being hit with these things. Our objective, understand the big picture, business continuity. I don't need an excuse. And then more details as to how we're going to respond if it is a man-made, these things are out of order here. If it's a man-made or natural disaster, I probably, whenever I see the word disaster on an exam, I go, let me guess, I've got to move I got to get from my desk and go to a different building. That's pretty much what disaster means on a test. It just means you're going to have an alternate site. You're going to test, does it really work? Like fire drills, you're testing for these disasters. Incident response, you can still test. My wife does it all the time. She does phishing work, attacks, in fact, this is going to bother me until hilarious. I got to put that in its right order. It doesn't belong there. Who counts this way? Sorry. Incident response, or IR. Boy, I must have gotten tired. Is also, though, the issue, since it was man-made intentional, there are issues where you might need to call the police. You might need to notify customers that their data is breached. And one of the hardest parts is, I'm going to go a little outside of this, but I want you thinking about it. When there's incident response, your immediate thing is dealing with the problem. That's not the same as forensics. Forensics goes back over really what happened. So for instance, my wife, there's a new attack. Everybody's getting, it's a new incident, and you were infected. We saw a user clicked on it. We have evidence of that. It sets off. All right, data might have been compromised. It could have been the HR data got out. 2 weeks later in forensics, they realized no data was exfiltrated. Now they got in, they got stuck here, and they didn't find it, and the attackers actually never retrieved the data. But you had to make a call. You're like, I've got 5 minutes or else I'm in violation of whatever, a number of rules that say that you have to notify people if you think their data was compromised. And for 2 weeks, you thought it might have been. That's tough. That's tough. That's a little outside the scope for a beginner class like this, but I want you to keep it in mind in real life. It's not easy. So don't go judging people at their job. No, I learned in CC, you're supposed to do that. Still, they will let you know that the order is if somebody gets in a car accident and you're performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, they're not breathing. Do you stop and notify people? Hey, wait a minute. Before I give this guy mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, I need to notify there's people. No, you save the person first. So we're going to talk about those issues of, do I call the customer or do I first contain the problem? Do I unplug the bad server or isolate the entire network first and then notify? And typically that is, you do want to contain the damage before you start your notification process. Of course, we saw yesterday, containment took 74 days on average, and I might want to know the difference in real life before that. I need to know. All right, so business continuity, again, is just overall, what was left over? What didn't you prevent? What risks still reside? It's a very common term, residual risk. Hey, we still got 5% of our risks are out there. I'm willing to live with 5%. Visa and MasterCard, I think they use 3. They're willing to accept that 3% of their money might be stolen. But at a certain point, they're going to start tracking it down. The importance, I got to keep servicing if I'm a hospital, I still have to take care of patients no matter what. I don't care if the computers are up. But we want to minimize that downtime. We want to maintain things. We want to protect, again, besides loss of life, loss of reputation is the worst thing. Some companies never come back. And of course, we want to maintain compliance. There's a lot of laws that require notification. The hardest part in any development life cycle is understanding what you want and the waiter understanding what you said, right? And you go to a restaurant and we call that analysis. In business continuity planning, that is called the business impact analysis. That term alone could spend a week on it, all right? So, but basically it's the hardest part of business continuity. Unlike in risk assessment where I identified individual assets, what does this, whatever data store do? What does the SQL server do? Whatever. Here I'm looking at business processes. So every organization has a number of processes. There's always going to be an HR. There's always going to be whatever, a customer service, there's a sales department. Whatever you do, every company produces some service and maybe a product, So you're looking at these business process areas. What could stop this process? How would this be impacted if whatever customer service was down for a week? Most people could not survive that, by the way. We're going to figure out what areas are most critical. That's not the same as important. My retirement plan is very important. If I get in a car accident, they will not be checking that. They'll be checking my pulse. They'll be checking, right? Is he breathing? That's a good start. They're more critical, but they're all important. The sales department is just as important as customer service, just as important as legal. But in an emergency, usually customer service has to come up, right? Then you come up with a strategy. You create a plan that implements the strategy. The strategy is what you want to happen, kind of like a policy. And then the plan is created. One of the hardest things here in real life is, like in my house, I haven't actually have a real fire. How much time do you think I spent over the years thinking about what should I do? Maybe I should update my plan. I don't, because I've never had a real fire. And I told you the other day, if you didn't have like forced requirements for sprinklers in your building, they probably wouldn't even put them in the building. Why? We've never had a fire here before. So a lot of these things in business continuity are legal requirements. Whether you want to or not, you better meet fire codes, right? We're going to, and the real challenge is they put one guy in charge. One person in any organization is likely to be the main person who does all that. And they might have a couple direct reports, but I don't care if it's a Fortune 1000 company, they're probably a very small department. The business coordinator, business continuity coordinator, very often a department of one with a bunch of dotted lines to somebody, some subject matter expert in various process areas. In every process area, somebody should be a dotted line to him. Yeah, you can't have, and other things for exams. Oh, thank you, Arpita. That I've been teaching this for years, and it used to be its own domain in the CISSP, and it was always the number one failed domain. When you failed, you would get your and it was like, no, that was my worst. That was my worst. Always.
Yeah, and Larry, I think maybe you can share a little bit about this, but the questions in the CC exam are not linear by domain, right? They are all interspersed between the different domains. So
yeah, it's hard to draw a neat line and go, this is obviously domain 2.
Right.
No. There's a lot of overlap, and that's always true. It's like when we're categorizing, like I always say, the simplest thing for me to categorize, I had to put clothes away. And I what do I go by? Shirts, pants, underwear, or whatever. Well, is this a t-shirt? Is it going a shirt or is it underwear? It's hard, and it's both. Whenever we categorize, it makes things kind of easy, but individual items don't necessarily fit in categories yet. For some reason, I heard my daughter say, "You're not a typical man, Dad." And I think she meant it as a compliment, but she studies psychology and she likes to tell me what men are bad about. The BCP life cycle, here we go. So it's like any other life cycle. I said the hardest part is the analysis, but why did you go to this restaurant? Why, who's coming? And that's your policy. And this is typically management doesn't give a crap until they were told, no, you have to. We got a notice from the fire company. Oh, so mostly driven by law. Unfortunately, that's, if you see emergency exits in your building, it's not because your manager thought, hey, did anybody start to think about emergency exits? Come on, what about our people? They were told to do this. You design things that will do this. Maybe we after the BIA, we said the customer service group has to be up within 4 hours. Actually, there's a couple of key metrics, and they go by different terms. The most common term in the BIA is for each process area, maximum tolerable downtime. How long downtime can I afford to be without customer service or whatever? How long can I afford to be off the road if my car gets a flat tire? Unfortunately, NIST still uses this term after first calling it maximum allowable downtime. And somebody said to them, you realize that spells out mad, right? And they changed it to the ISO calls it maximum tolerable period of disruption. Most tests still call it MTD. I don't care. This is the overall in the BIA. I can't afford to be off the road for an hour, whatever that time is. So to meet that, I'm going to be able to, well, have to rebuild it. I got to put on a tire. How long will it take me to rebuild it? So that's the recovery time objective. Recovery time objective no, it's not equivalent because if I get a flat tire, it might be 15 minutes before I find a safe place on the side of the road where I can actually change a tire. Does that make sense? In fact, I even have to do a damage assessment. Wait a minute, is that the bumpy road or is my tire going? So it always has to be less. Does that make sense? It's almost like you were doing my segue. Perfect timing there. Bhavish?
Yes, it totally makes
Fantastic.
sense.
Thank you for asking it, though. It was a perfect time. All right. Now, in a car, that's all I worry about. But for my server to actually be brought up and recovered, to include the data, I have the recovery point objective for the data. How old can that data be? Can you live with like a day's worth of lunch? Because we do nightly backups typically. Oh, no, I don't want to lose more than 4 hours. All right, then we'll do an RPO of 4 hours. I'd rather not lose anything. Well, there's no such technology just yet. Actually, we're getting close. We're getting close in something called, and I don't think it's on the exam yet, but if you, again, you get a job and you want to do more, you want to actually do this, you want disaster recovery as a service because they'll mirror everything. They'll do everything, but that's not a testable objective yet. All right, so these are very critical. Now, in order for the customer service people to work, it's not just the server has to be built and they're going to need whatever the data from no more than 4 hours ago. There's 20 people that work there. Normally they have 20 workstations. They usually have whatever 5 printers, and these printers can do 20 pages per minute. Well, what if there was an emergency? What would be your, and this goes by different names. I like minimum operating requirements. Whoops. Minimum operating requirements, but you know the ISO, they got to add an extra character to the ISO. And ISO actually 22301. Should you need it, it's an auditable standard, so it's very commonly quoted in both tests and in the real world. We're going to call this the minimum business continuity objectives, just like they also call this maximum tolerable period of disruption. That's also ISO. Usually on a test, I just see MTD. So these are the things you need to figure out. How long can you drive on a spare tire? I got a spare tire there. We're good. Are you going to put your original tire back there? Or are you just going to drive on the spare, that donut tire that only goes, So you also have to calculate the maximum time in alternate operations. Because you only have, say, I could run on battery. I've got petroleum. How much petroleum do you have? A week's worth? 24 hours worth? This a new term you might see. It's called your risk reserve. I can only tolerate, yeah, we can switch to battery for about 24 hours. Anybody have like a UPS and the power goes out and you're still watching TV for a little bit? You're like, uh-oh. We've got like 15 minutes. Shut down the TV, at least keep the internet up, That's in your risk reserve. So you set your policy. This is what the law tells us we have to do because we're a bank. It turns out we got to have mirrored sites. I didn't know that. All right. We're going to do the business impact analysis. We're going to prioritize everything. We're going to design solutions that bring these different areas up, and we're going to test it out. Let's give it a try. Let's see if this fire drill really works. Light a fire. Nobody lights fires in their fire drills. Even in a fireman situation, they'll do it in a very controlled environment. Are you using Bay 2 where the live fire drills are done? Because we don't do them in the living room. You have to be very careful about your test. Basically, is it just a paper-based test? Am I going to simulate it on real equipment and hardware in a lab that doesn't touch production? Or am I going to actually test some production stuff? Or maybe all of it, That's what it boils. And you have to figure out, does the law tell me I got to do it? Banks are required to do full interruption tests. So are parts of the military, and they don't want to do it. A buddy of mine is the CIO at the Federal Reserve, and he said we didn't want to do it until, and it was over 10 years ago. I think it was 2013 when they finally did it, but they were required to do it for 5 years. And then prior, they kept getting exceptions. We're testing all the customer data. It's just employee stuff we haven't tested. We tested recovery, but we didn't test reconstitution. Let's make sure you get that one right. Recovery versus reconstitution. Recovery, put the donut tire on. Reconstitution, get my original tire, acceptable levels. Reconstitution is normal levels. When I'm recovering, if there's a fire and everybody goes out, we are going to recover the most critical first. Got to get those customer service people up. When the new building, we got it back. Yeah, we had a transformer blow. We fixed it. Least critical first. Hey, audit department. They said they got the building working again. Why don't you go over and see if that's actually true? Hey, it went down again. Oh, we just blew another transformer. It must be another problem. Never mind. Go back. So you always recover most critical first. You reconstitute least critical first. Right. Critical first. I should do that in red. It's a brownish red, whatever. And reconstitute least critical. And I'll do that in green. Go ahead, take your time, guys. We're not in a rush. There's always changes. It's the hardest part. Change in the weather, change in technology, change in law, change in staff. So you got to keep it up. And what we hope never happens, what Larry never had to do with any real fire drill, please don't do the day, is actually activate the plan. Let's hope it's the plan I never need. But back to Arpita's point about being very critical in any exam. It seems like a lot of security people are all about two things. One, prevention. And two, just how to do the things they know how to do. I always say, remember, you want to do what the customer wants. And don't just think prevention. It's not, it's like you're cooking food. Don't cook what you love. Cook what the customer ordered. Right? And don't assume everything's going to go right. Assume that there's going to be some detection response issues. All right, the policy again. Yes.
Sorry, that was sorry for the interruption, but I think there was a study that was done recently where they found out that very few organizations actually pour resources into detection and response, and they get burned by it because they just assume that, they are going to be able to prevent attacks or issues, but that's rarely the case. And then when something actually does happen, they are not equipped to detect and respond. So that's actually really, valid point.
It's so true. You see it with startups all the time. You see it with the Web3 companies. They're like, yeah, okay, assuming everything goes right, but you're going to learn. It's just like in martial arts. People are like, have you planned to get hit? Because you're going to get hit. Mike Tyson says, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And I was like, you didn't stop and think about that. And for anybody who is involved in martial arts, I just had this conversation with a student, and I said, there's 3 ways to react. Basically, when you get hit really hard, you can get scared. That's what most people do. They get scared and they run away. It's hard to, protect your family when you're going to run away and see mommy. The other one, though, is to get angry. We see this in politics. We're not going to get scared. Instead, we'll just get angry and show you. That's not good either. That's actually not really, you're going to do a lot of, think of all the things you've done and regretted in your life, and then correlate them. That's exactly what I told my student. I said, would you go over all the things you've regretted in life, and then tell me if you were angry at the time that you did that? Don't get angry either. The best thing to do, what our best fighters do when they get hit, is be a good sport about it. If you were him, you'd be trying to hit him too. You don't get angry. You thank him. You be a good sport. You thank your man, and then you get back in the game. You go, hey, nice shot. Boom, like right away. It's like, boom, whoa, nice shot. But always be a good sport. And that's the hard part. Don't get, whatever. That's the way to deal with any problem. All right, so the policy again is set by the senior people, and then senior people in an organization. If it's a privately held company, there's typically you have 3 key roles at least. You have the CEO, and then you have somebody who's going to tell them you got to do things on time, and you got to do things and watch your money. So you always got your schedule and money guy. You got a chief operations officer wants to make sure you're doing things on schedule. You got a chief financial officer wants to make sure that you're not wasting money, and those 3 people typically are considered the senior managers. Now we have other things in our field, newer role. We're trying to get chief risk officers out there. Many banks have them. Not everybody has a chief risk officer out there. But whatever the case is, they're the ones that approve the plans. They assign the coordinator. They report to the coordinator is going to report to them and say, this is what I found out. This is my staff or whatever. And they approve the plan, and they are ultimately accountable. I don't care who you should have hired a new coordinator then, it's your fault. But the BIA is the toughest part. This is where we have to get real numbers. We have to get those basic criticality metrics, right? Maximum tolerable period of disruption, aka MTD. That's the new ISO term. So get used to it. In your real world, if you're doing any ISO certification, you're going to have to do that. This is how long you can afford to be down. The recovery time objective is to be able to build it back, and it's got to be less than that time. I have to be able to put on a spare tire in less than that time. For data, the recovery point objective, and this dictates your backup schedule. And they have some questions on backups, very fundamental stuff on full versus differential versus incremental. Services and supplies. I'm going to need at least 20 printers in here. You got them. I can't get them. They're not working. I can ping them. Yeah, but they don't have any toner. Oh. So again, it's not just having the technology. A lot of times, and this is the world of supply chain management. After COVID, we started seeing all kinds of problems in our supplies. Of course, in computer security, supplies in cloud computing are often APIs. We'll get more into that as the week goes on. And then the risk reserve again. I can't drive on a donut tire forever. I don't have enough petroleum to keep running it, but hopefully the power company is going to come back up again. Our number 1 priority, we've said this a few times, is life safety, and that's known as EOP planning, occupant emergency planning. Recovery, most critical first. We're going to get them up to, hey, if whatever, if this donut tire does 55 miles an hour, is that good enough for you? All right, good. It's acceptable. Reconstitution is when you get back to normal. And business resumption is often when you deal with those reputational losses. You know, whenever you have an incident, whatever it is, I don't care if it's just your neighbor's going, hey, did you see the Joneses? Something must have been going on next door. I don't know what happened. I saw an ambulance over there. For some reason, people just look down on you or whatever. You need to let them know, oh, yeah, we had an incident, all right. Somebody broke in our passwords. We're better than ever. We now support YubiKeys. We're the first organization to do that. So that's what business resumption is often, just gaining back your reputation, letting people know you learned your lesson, that you're transparent about things, that you've added some improvement. The benefit of planning is that you minimize the downtime. Now, we have a plan for this. Reputational management, again, we got to deal with these things. And in competitive advantage, because some people weren't ready. As Arpita says, a lot of organizations, it's really funny. It's sad. It's considered and by the people who work in this field, the biggest hole in security. Because if you're not forced to do this, you won't do it. Most people still don't have a functioning fire extinguisher in their kitchen. And as I say that, we just moved out of our house in this timber. I don't know where my fire extinguisher is. I shouldn't say that. All right. So our key takeaways, it's essential that we plan for something and that if we're going to continue, we have a plan. Disaster recovery. Okay. And I mostly just figure, let me guess, I got to move. Right. So generally it means the building's unusable. It's not really the definition. It's kind of a loose definition. The Disaster Recovery Institute uses they say a disaster is something that was sudden. Yes, it's a subset. It's sudden. It results in your inability to do business. And so, okay, so I actually stopped my car. You know, what's wrong? Why did we stop? The road's closed, all right, what else are we going to do? There's a tree fell in the middle of the road. What are we going to do? Yeah. So I might even have to get out of my car and get in a shuttle. And there's all kinds of things. It could be a natural disaster, like I said, floods, earthquakes, pandemic outbreaks, human-made problems. Oh, I spilled my coffee on the server, whatever, environmental, other issues. There'll be all kinds of things. So it's we do this in the BIA. We identified this earlier in our business continuity. We identify the critical assets. We kind of knew that, and then we have to define the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective. Again, time is the time it takes me to build this thing. If there's no data on it, then that's built. It's done. But if I'm building something that has data on it, I didn't meet the recovery time unless I met the recovery point. So recovery time just says that's the big picture. If it included data, then I need to know how old that data is allowed to be. All right, so our backups, in fact, so let's show you. This is your directory right here. If I look at a file's property, oops, anyway. Different glass. This file is ready for archiving. What does that mean? When you write a file, create a new file, or update an existing file, you're going to see that. That's in the an attribute of a file. Now, in this case, it happens to be on NTFS. It could be tracked within whatever the technology or backup system you're using. And it just says, you don't have a backup of this. You better make a backup of that. If I just back up everything, of course I'm going to get you. I'm backing up everything every night. Well, then you don't have to worry about it. You got everything. When I was at IBM, my biggest customer was Scott Paper, and to do this took 30 hours. So you can't do that every night because it's only 24 hours. So we would kick that off on Friday night. Once the backup system backs it up, we clear that archive bit. It's called the archive bit. So that means I let the system know, you already have this. No need to back it up again. That saved us time. So what we did was we tried doing a full backup on Friday. Monday, just do what's called a differential. In a differential, I back up, changed files only. And don't touch that. Don't let it know. Do not modify archive bit. Well, for restore processes, if I change it, then Monday's going to get Monday's changes, and then I'm going to let it know. And then Tuesday, I'm going to get just Tuesday and Wednesday. That's cool. But if I have a failure on a Friday, I would need the last full and all the small increments. In an incremental backup, that's what you do. In an incremental backup, we backup modify changes, backup changes only. I'm not getting anything that's already there, but I clear the archive bit. And this makes, so it only took 4 hours to back up on Monday. It only took 4 hours to back up on Tuesday. The problem is if there's a failure, I've got to get 4 tapes. I've got 5 tapes. I gotta get the last Saturday's backup, then Monday's incremental, then Tuesday's incremental. See, I wanted to do differentials because I would only need 2 tapes. If I did differential, I would need the last full, oops, restore requires, 2 tapes, 2 media. I'll say tapes. Some people still have tapes. 2 tapes. Last full. And the last differential. The problem was my Monday's differential took 4 hours. Tuesday's differential backup took 8 hours. Wednesday took 12 hours, and we actually only had a 6-hour backup window. So restore here, and we actually had to do this. Restore requires up to, if you do work every 7 days a week, up to six tapes. Last full, every incremental. So the choice is one's faster on the backup, the other one's faster on the restore. Any questions on how that worked? Because even when we're not using tapes and you're not using NTFS, I'm sure Dropbox works on a similar situation. Everything I'm doing is a Dropbox. And this makes me, all my files pretty much are on Dropbox, all my personal files that I need to keep. So that's like disaster recovery as a service for me. And the only thing I have to always do is I rebuild operating systems constantly. And it's things like my spell checker that I lose, you know. It's like, no, I thought I saved that as a word. But I keep all my backup. But I do constantly lose my spell check stuff. All right, you guys aren't asking questions. Maybe some people are eating lunch. We have to have copies of those backups somewhere. Again, I like it on the cloud. I'm a cloud guy. And again, the frequency of how often we back up, I'm backing up in real time. It's amazing, you know, as long as I don't have to think about it near real time. That's what disaster recovery as a service does it. But for a test, we're going to figure out our RPO requirements, and we're going to do that. Where do you go? Where do you go? Well, you've got two issues. You know, I've got to go somewhere for data processing. Do that in the cloud. Where are you going to go for your end user facilities? Home. Yeah, but Larry, your wife is going to see you sitting there and send you on chores. So I have to sit here, or else she'll just come up in the middle of it. Yeah, I know you got your little class going on. I need you to run to the store for me. No, so we have basically three choices. You could add a four. Do you have a fully equipped site? Do you have some equipment? Do you have the cold site? Nothing real hard here. And the fully fully equipped, today it's best practice to have data there. So some people will call that a mirrored site or a redundant site. They're much simpler on this exam. If you're also studying for CISSP, you don't, and you're like, what about, you know, reciprocal agreements or, excuse me, the rolling hot? No, just these three will be enough. And assume on the hot, you've probably got data there. Because that's where I was looking for when I was prepared for this and I took my exam. I was like, so you don't do mirrored site. You just assume the hot site's probably mirrored. Okay. All right, good enough for me. The technology's like, yeah, because virtualization, here's how I restore my servers. Right? Do I have my virtual box open? Now, because Zoom performs better in Windows, I actually do it in my host. But almost everything else I do is done in some virtualized server. Everything on my machine, I just take these little VMs and I just got to I can copy this and put it on another server. It's really easy. I can rebuild servers just how long as it takes me to, oh, you're old. That's another very agile application. This thing's always being updated. So virtualization allows me to take an entire operating system, all except for the hardware. So all the users, all the applications, all my configuration stuff, and run it in this case, this is called a Type 2 hypervisor. It requires Windows, VirtualBox. You could also have a Type 1 where it's just, no, that's all you load. Citrix, metaphor, Citrix. You old, Larry. VMware and Microsoft Hyper-V. They're their own things, right? And it's so easy to just rebuild your server. You just make it cloud. Come on, it's the best part of cloud. And data replication to a secondary location. Again, I'm doing that with Dropbox, but you might have to. And in some places, it's still an older trusted line for the bank that we've been using for 4 years. We're looking on moving it. You have to develop procedures. We know what those are, step-by-step instructions for every individual or every role. Each role has a certain thing that they should do. If you're named in the plan, like a lot of times we have to have not just alternate equipment. Where's the alternate firewall guy? Those are called succession plans. So in any plan, typically you have at least one primary person to call with their phone number and two alternates in case that person's not there. And what they will do. Everything else is pretty much role-based if you're not named in the plan. But each team will be responsible for something, whatever you're the desktop group, whatever. And you may have to be coordinating with a lot of service providers and vendors. Absolutely right. You're going to be replugging in. No, we moved our routers here. We're now coming in from this location. Again, when you're testing it, you got to be careful. I don't want to light a fire. I want to keep it simple. Personally, as a network nerd, these look good on paper. This is where I really like to do it because I'm low level. When I come up, I was an operator guy and I just wanted to hear, like, I remember when people would brag about how fast they could restore a file on a tape. We could restore that server. And I was like, dude, you're assuming best case scenario for restores. If that file is a compressed file already, if there's media, if it's shooting a multimedia, it's going to be different. 10 gigs is not 10 gigs everywhere, if anybody knows what I'm talking about there. So I really want to see that tape. I want to see that that tape can even be read by that thing, because the tape drive's very picky. So I like this, but if there's a problem, I'm in a lab and I didn't mess with production. My biggest customers is a trader, Philadelphia's largest presence on the stock exchange, Susquehanna Investment. You don't want to bring them down by accident. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to kick off all you traders. I was testing something. It's a resume generating event. But some places you need that type of assurance. You're going to power it down. You're going to shut down the entire facility and you're going to try to run at the alternate site. Again, if you're not required by law to do this, and only banks, in my experience, and parts of the military are required to do that. They're the only ones that do. And even banks try not to do it. They get away with it. Anyway, regularly we have to understand that things change. Technologies change, threats change. And again, we have to keep records, especially sometimes it's just maintaining contact list calls. Call trees are some of the hardest times. Nah, you got a new phone. That's one of the things I just text my wife just sent me. She's having an argument with T-Mobile, and she said, "Get ready. I think I'm going to change our phone plan." That came this morning while we're teaching. All right. Summary of our disaster recovery stuff. You guys are very, very quiet here.
Any questions, comments, anything that you have experienced in this domain based on your work experience that you would like to share?
Larry, can you just very, very briefly go on to simulation disaster recovery? Is that live
Yeah.
on certain systems?
No, in fact, let's bring up some very important things. It's probably more CISSP than it is CC, but just in case. We have let's break up some middle ground. So somewhere between paper-based and full interruption, we have simulation and we have parallel. Simulation, they both use hardware and software. They're not, but simulation, one never affects. Is it affect? Might be affect. I always forget how to. Never affects production. Where is it done? That's debatable. Do you go to the alternate site and simulate it at the alternate site? Not everybody agrees there. It's obviously more expensive. If you didn't calculate it, it'd be more expensive to drive your staff to the alternate site. It might be in a different region. You know your staff's going to want to expense something nice. They're going to, can we get a dinner? Can we get lunch with nice sandwiches? Whatever the case is. The simulation test, we know for sure, when I'm taking an exam, will not affect production. But where are they doing? Because you're going to get a lot more realistic expectations if you do it at the alternate site. But I assume you're probably just doing it at the primary site. Because I know that's less money and most people want to save money. Suppose I need to, moving from, the cheapest test to the most expensive. I don't want to do a full interruption, but I want to make sure the alternate site actually has the right equipment and people, the lines are connected properly. So at a parallel test, one thing we can assume, always conducted at alternate site. That's a great thing. How would you compare, distinguish between hot site and parallel? Well, if I had a hot site, then could do a parallel test to see if the hot site was configured properly. Does that make sense? In fact, if I had, whether it was hot, warm, or cold, if I wanted to take an exam and know that I'm definitely testing that alternate site, hot, warm, or cold, simulation's probably not the right answer. You're probably going to have to go to a parallel. I don't know that I need to go to full interruption. In fact, if all they're asking is that I have to test the alternate site, parallel's enough. Here is the tricky part. Does it touch production? Will it affect production? Well, the answer is something like, hope not. But I wouldn't say it will not. So if I'm taking an exam and they say, we absolutely do not want it to affect production, the answer is not parallel. It's got to be simulation or less. And that sucks. I wish there was called two kinds, parallel with or without, but they don't call it that. We do our best not to, but there's no guarantee. That's all. DR sites are part of the high availability arc. Absolutely. Sure. The difference in, I would say, in a DR site, if it's your own hot site or your own warm site or whatever, if you don't have a disaster, it's just wasted. Where when you have a cloud type of environment, if they have whatever 5 sites and they're all up, then you get 80%. I mean, you get 100% utilization. If one of them goes down, you can see everything. You're just getting like 80% of the performance. But you still get 100% of your data. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Larry, Bhavesh has a question about budget allocation for testing DR plans.
Oh, there's so many questions there. I missed a couple. Do the organizations have any specific it's the most underfunded area. It really is. If they're not forced by law to do it, it's like, no, we have to have fire extinguishers. Well, I don't know where we're going to get the money. You're going to have to find the money. That it's like for sprinklers. And unfortunately, if you don't force people, they won't do it. Great. So DR sites can be configured as active. Oh, you're using parallel to be a processing as opposed to a parallel test. I'm talking about, when I'm using the word parallel here, these are in test types. Test types can be paper-based, walkthroughs, simulation, parallel, full interruption test. When you're talking about active processing in parallel versus active, that's a different thing. Yeah. So that's the way cloud is. Cloud is, and I usually use it, we should, boy, I'm old. This was when we first came up with clusters in the 90s, old deck clustering, but an active cluster versus an active passive cluster. In an active cluster, everything's processing the way clouds do. Active passive is when something's just sitting there waiting in case that. So that would be the opposite. But yeah, haven't heard that term in a while.
Okay.
All good stuff for conversation, please. We've got plenty of time here. I again, knowing that this is an entry-level class, I wanted to make sure I didn't overdo it. I'm so excited that we got done yesterday on time. We still have incident management, but I'd like to take another break before we do. My goodness, there's 2 more questions for my wife already. So, and it's a detailed question. It's not even like what's for lunch or where's my sandwich. It was review these and tell me which one you like better. Let me pause the recording. All right. Well, welcome back. I know Parvathi's back. Anybody else back?
I see Chantal is back.
All right, thank you. All right, well, let's get started. Oh, and then we have a couple more people back. There we go. Thanks, guys. All right, incident response. And I told you during the break, this is what my wife has to deal with and why I understand, actually. It's like working in the ER. It's so bad. She's constantly getting alerts. There's constantly something going off. And we've had many of, whether it's we're outside or just home, we're going to watch this movie, and it's like, oh, wait. And the next thing you know, she's logging in. I can do it from here. And I'm trying to watch a movie and she's handling emergencies. She's at a large pharmaceutical where there's always either an actual, we got an alert from our detection systems, or we got a notification from a vendor. Microsoft just announced there's a new patch, there's a vulnerability. So they're constantly, staying on top of these things, and they just keep getting worse. I personally think that that's where AI comes in. So they're going to mention it once, but I think it deserves a lot of mention. I said it earlier, get my drawing tools back up, that the answer to dealing with so many of these is SOAR, SOAR, the security orchestration and the key, automated response. To automate, it's not artificial intelligence, just automation. But that's what we want to do. We want to automate the response. So as more and more AI-driven threats are coming out, they use ChatGPT to create a new virus. Well, I use ChatGPT to create an antivirus. It's just how it's going to go. But right now, I did talk about the responses are called playbooks. Response playbooks. I don't know if it's one word or not, but you have to figure out what will you do? Spell it out exactly. And that's where we're challenged. We're getting better, but if AGI gets here in 2029, I think the AGI is going to be great at this. So and we talked about, the future of work with AI, learning source systems now, training them, learning how the playbooks work, helping them avoid putting whatever 6 fingers on a hand that should have 5 now is a lot of work, and where we need the work. We need people working with these AIs, training them and guiding them so they can eventually go out and soar on their own. But we're probably, if AGI comes out in 2029, what don't we have until then? Or what do we have instead? Narrow AIs. Narrow AIs will increasingly be more powerful, and they're very dangerous because they're not well-rounded. They're not thinking about all the other things. So, well, I made more profit. Yeah, but you sold every living thing on the planet. Oh, well, I didn't think about that. The incident response life cycle, if you memorize it and commit it, you'll get every question. You'll get every question if you just remember, wait a minute, let me read the sentence. They said, what did you miss? You missed mostly an introduction and welcome back. And me talking about SOAR, automated responses for incident response, to make our incident response automated, where we're not quite there. We're training these systems, these SOAR systems from SIM to SOAR. But what I want you to understand, though, to pass the test, and this is where you just walked in, if you understand the steps of the life cycle. So first, you're prepared for a problem, right? That's why I carry a jack and a spare tire in my car. I knew these things could happen. But then I detect a problem. And when you detect a problem, I don't care if it's an attack or an accident. If you detected a fire, how did you detect it? The smoke detector went off. Someone said they saw the fire. Let's double check. Your detection skills, either human or automated, make mistakes. IDSs have false positives. We have things when you test for a virus. It said you have it. Oh, never mind. We tried it again. It says you didn't. So whenever you detect a problem, write out the life cycle. So one is actually preparation. We're prepared. That's why we have this too. But 2, we detect a problem. Make sure that that's true. Analyze. When you analyze that, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to confirm the report. Actually, to confirm. You're going to confirm that it's right. And then you're going to figure out how bad is it? What is the impact? Severity. How bad is it? Then and only then will you go to step 3, contain. So here's where I noticed a lot of questions. And it's pretty much, I'm not giving away the exam. I'm giving away almost every exam knows that people make these mistakes. They detect a problem and they start unplugging things, or they isolate the network. Yes, Parvati.
Yeah, from my experience, I have a problem with the detect and analyze, even if it is human or a bot. So they have this playbook. Again, it depends on how that human working on their training and so many aspects of it. So every time I run into some issue, it's a simple thing. You boot a system, or something, either your VPN not working or something else not working. So explain to them, most of these, off late, everything is outsourced. Number one is language communication. That's a big barrier. A lot of times I don't understand what they're saying if it goes to some Asian, China or some country like that. Then 2, a lot of times these, whatever the network they use, not very clear. There's a lag in the system. I say something, after 10 seconds, I get a response from them. Then I explain to them, yeah, I know all these 10 steps. I finished it. Then again, they go back to the same playbook. Did you do step 1? I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, I finished all those 10 steps, but they have to run their playbook. So much waste of time, which causes so much frustration. So I can't imagine when we get to automated like bots and stuff, how everyone's life would be.
I think you and my wife would get along well venting about her sock team. So they detect problems and either they do one of the things. They ignore things that go off, and that really bothers her. But the other thing is that they so overreact. Did you then go to CrowdStrike and look at what did it say there? Just because somebody calls you, I hear her on the phone all the time. Listen, just because somebody calls you doesn't mean it. Yeah, but then that's when you go into the log. She gets so upset with that, what you just basically say, from detect to confirm what it is, because you have to confirm it is a real issue, and then what to do. And she gets very frustrated with her SOC teams, and they're outsourced. They're all and she actually, this was the topic of last night's dinner. She said literally it is 40 cents on the dollar is what these people are getting paid, and that's why they use this company. Oh,
I know.
You've got too much of the
yeah.
real world.
Yeah.
I think if I may add here, Larry, these type of scenarios work really well if you are doing iterative feedback mechanisms, because then you have a way to make corrections with feedback. And I think sometimes that's something that doesn't happen oftentimes if these are like third-party companies, and it takes weeks
Her
to get
company's
feedback.
had a contract since, and I think she just got her 5th year. She just got her 5th year. So at this place, and they had this contract with this outsourcing, the staff supplementation. Basically, they outsourced their SOC team, and since she'd been there. And she has talked about, as she's climbed up, she wasn't always at the level she is now. I think I'm going to fire them. This was part of our conversation last night.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, because she said we keep having the same problem. The other thing is she'll train a staff member. Oh, that's how this conversation started. She gets to work with their team. She knows the team really well eventually. And she goes, and I trained him. He was so good, and he quit. And then another guy, and then she said, this is the 3rd time in the last year. I don't know what they're doing to their people, but I am not training another person for them so they can get a better job elsewhere.
Yeah, in my opinion, I think it's to do with some common sense and also their mindset. Even the victim, I'm sorry for lack of the terminology, I'm saying, I finished all those 10 steps. Don't go back again. Hey, did you do this? It's a common sense. I booted my system, which is one on one off. This, again, don't repeat the same thing. Then say, okay, try to, don't go through all the 10
No,
steps because
I
it's
feel
there in your
guilty.
playbook.
Parvati, I feel guilty because I'm going to let you in on a little metric and how we could fool the metrics back when I did help desk support back in 1990, 89 to 90. I, as a network guy, was expected to complete 15 calls a day. What is a completion? Did I resolve their incident? No. Somebody could call me up and say, we're having a problem, and I have my checklist. What version of Novell do you have? What version of the 3Com driver? You got to go back and patch that new driver. It's not the driver. I'm sorry. And we would find ways to get you off the phone, and that counts as complete. So I always got my 15. I don't know that I always had a satisfied person who was working at the end of that. But you had to do it or else you're in trouble. And I think that's what that person made you go through. Sometimes, like you said, they just don't have the common sense. You're like, can we please skip ahead here? Like
Yeah.
I had a problem recently when we're still fighting it. I dropped off my T-Mobile. This is part of the phone, or my voice said we're getting a new phone. I dropped off the T-Mobile. We had 2 T-Mobile 5G routers, one for this place, one for our house. We'd moved out of the house. I take it back. Okay, well, that cancels the hardware, but you still got to cancel the service. How do I do that? Why would I transfer hardware and give it back to you if I'm not using it and still want the service? Use your common sense. That's stupid. Don't keep charging me service and make me stay on the phone for 20 times and someone said I did it wrong. I hit some number wrong. I handed you a box.
Yep.
End of story.
Sorry to derail the topic.
No, these are important things, really, to me, because this class is also for beginners to understand what's going to be expected in real world. So let me control C that. Wait a second. So do remember, though, back to my point there, and Parvati's point is it's not real easy to get from detect to confirm what the thing is. It really is. Confirm the impact. It can be very tough. But on your exam, you're going to be put in scenarios, and it might say something like, an incident was reported. You think customer records might be leaking or something like that. That's one question. That's not the same as it has been confirmed that customer records have been leaked. If you think it might be, the answer is to analyze. If you've already, it seems no, it's been confirmed, the analysis is over, and you look at containment measures. It's usually isolate the affected system, something like that. However that is. CASSP will get real. Do you pull the power from the back of the unit or from the supplier? Here it's just isolate the affected system. So the definition of incident is just, it's a point in time, but we know it means man-made intentional. It's some attack, some breach. The objective is to limit the damage, to limit time and money wasted, get back to work. It's part of business continuity. I'm not trying to catch bad guys out here. That's not my job. Types of incidents we say could be man-made intentional cyber attacks. They're very common: malware, backdoors, phishing attacks, intellectual property theft, right? And insider attacks. A lot of intellectual property stuff. I've worked with a lot of these guys. It's a salesman who was about to leave, and before he went to his new company, he wanted to bring down some company stuff. My wife never deals with that stuff. That is not her. It's all about malware, patch management stuff, endpoint detection. Her CrowdStrike is her baby. So imagine how she felt last month with the outage. So we have that, our plan overall. We of course it's tied to our business continuity, but we have specific incident response plans, like Parvati's point, when people you say we're having a problem, and again, the report might be, my machine is acting funny. My machine seems slow today. It's not like you knew what it was, right? So in incident management, you have a couple of team roles typically in the incident response process area. Roles. No, my wife's role is not exactly like this because a lot of the forensic stuff is outsourced to somebody else, but they have basically a handler, and you have a analyst. The analyst. The handler is the first responder from incident management, but that's not who they called. They called the help desk. And your help desk guy might not realize that this isn't just some technical glitch, it's an actual incident. And they go over to the infected machine, I mean, the troubled machine, and they start doing stuff like powering it on and off, updating drivers, whatever. And they're also, AKA, corrupting evidence. So one of the policies that you're definitely going to need is to let your help desk people, who are typically the first people users call, if you suspect this is not a glitch and it's an incident, hands off. And then they start documenting everything. Some of the most important thing to use this as evidence is to document what you found, when and who found it, where they find it. You got to maintain a documented chain of custody. So you're prepared. You have your policies, you have your team members, you have your roles, everybody knows what to do. You detect a problem, you figure out what it is. Again, detection controls are often wrong. How many times do you think you heard something downstairs and it was nothing? Wife, go outside, I hear something out there. It's nothing. But if you do have to take containment measures, once you've figured out that it is bad, you're going to contain it. I need to stop it from spreading. Then you could do, and now nowhere in this thing it says, when do you start calling and notifying people? This is right out from 861. It depends on the laws and regulations you fall under. But on an exam, I found I didn't start notifying anybody of anything until after this. If it takes me 100 days to contain it, though, that's not reasonable. So in real world, it's not such a fixed line. Again, for your exam, after containment, you'll start notifying, but in real world, be reasonable. Here's another tricky one. So let's step through the life cycle. We're prepared. We got that. Hey, we detected a problem. No, it's a real problem. We contained the damage. We isolated it. We eradicated it. You know what it was? Yeah, the root cause of this was that the system wasn't patched. They installed a backdoor. We removed the backdoor. Actually, we reinstalled the media from Gold Image. And then we got the people working again. So in eradication, we figured out the cause. I'm going to say it's the basic cause. This is very debatable. The term does not show up at NIST, what I'm trying to allude to. In post-incident review, the lessons learned were the root cause. Now, root cause could be, you could say the root cause was it wasn't patched. And you go, no, the root cause was our IT team is not trained properly, or our incident response team is underfunded. So there could be other root causes. So I found that a little tricky. When we do root cause analysis, depending on who you're talking to, some people will claim it's an eradication. I will disagree. Larry disagrees. You recover it, and that means your people are working again. The emergency's over. But now you can figure out, and this is a lot of this stuff is really done in forensics. Forensics can take a long time to figure out what really happened here. When you're gathering evidence, that time period is called the discovery process. Gathering evidence. Discovery process. Guess what it's called if you're doing the same thing, but the evidence is all electronic? Would that be Lowercase e discovery. Yeah, for some reason, that's the term. And I've had a lot of students over the years not be familiar with e-discovery and thought it was just a basic asset identification out there. Oh, what other assets do we have electronically? Oh, I discovered it. No, it's literally a legal term, and it means you're gathering evidence. And you know what happens after you learn your lesson? You're better prepared the next time. So all processes continue. And whether it's the process of playing a guitar or doing incident response, you never get it right. But hopefully you get better. You can do it wrong. If you play out of tune or out of time, no subject will like that. If it's in tune and in time, they might. It depends on what you like. And you'll never be perfectly timed or tuned. You'll get better.
So, Larry, I have a question here.
Yeah, we go back.
There may be some incidents where the organization is required to notify law enforcement. In what stage does that happen typically?
And that's where it, again, is debatable. On the exam, it seemed like it was always after you would analyze, or excuse me, after containment. But that seemed simplistic to me because there are several, let me see, reporting cyber. Let's see some of the more popular ones. Let's use our AI assistant. And I'm going to go to the newer model because you're supposed to be, actually Claude's already pretty advanced. Let's go to Claude. I find Claude hallucinates less and is less powerful for that. But for reporting data breaches, what time frames are most popular with regulatory bodies, And I think in some case, Office of Management Budget one time was 5 minutes, but let's see. Yeah, GDPR is 72 hours. So if you haven't contained it within 72 hours, too bad. It's time to report. HIPAA, 30 days. Don't worry, it's just healthcare data. We got some more time. I was afraid it was European data. Is it European healthcare? Without undue delay. Your Honor, I got a situation for how we could interpret the term. That seems like a lot of wiggle room there. Some financial services, 60 days. So it depends. It depends. And I think the 72 hours is actually a CISSP test question.
Right. And the containment may or may not have happened within 72 hours, but irrespective of that, I guess as soon as you confirm that there is an incident,
What
you need
was the average time to, oh, you're spelling the first letter was A. There you go. And it would have figured out average time to contain a cyber breach in 20, just to make sure he has the statistics, 2022. They're quoting the same one from IBM, 204 days. That was not to contain. No, that was to detect it. I believe 204 was for detection and another 72 days or so for containment. You're absolutely right. Do argue with these guys. I wish they would remember. And I used to think it was 2 or 4 days, but Larry set me straight on that. No, I started a new chat. It'll forget that. Yeah. So it was 73. All right. I was off by a day. So Arpita, it's not as easy as it sounds. So that's why I said it's very simplistic on the exam. I was like, well, B has me contain it and isolate the network, and C has me calling to report it. I'm going to go with containment right now. And I did do well. So I'm pretty sure that's on almost any exam. You're trying to contain first. You're definitely trying to contain.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Let's confirm with Claude. Let's just try that. In 861. Regarding SP 800-61 and the suggested life cycle, IR life. When would someone report a breach? In what step? In what step is ideal? I think that's more responsible, but I'm pretty sure the problem is if somebody's bleeding, yeah, I would hate to report before and now. I would hate to report before analysis to confirming the breach. And I would like to put, this is where it became obvious, my resources into containing the breach before reporting. But again, if it takes 200 and some days, that's not enough. And that's where I think why it's a pragmatic approach. This also has its merits. Prioritizing limits the potential damage. And that's why I felt that's what they simplistically wanted. However, you're approaching closely with the law. Oh, look at that. They actually. But because of regulatory requirements, and if you can't contain it. So great question, though. And these are good things to think about. I left room in this thing for that type of talk. All right, any questions on that? Because this life cycle really these are great questions because it's exactly where you get challenged on the exam is in the life cycle, not so much what whatever imaging tool would you use, to ensure that you have an image and not just a bit, a bit by bit copy. Actually, they may have talked about that. If you're going to image media, if you're going to use the salesperson's hard drive as evidence, I take the original out. I am going to use an imaging tool that makes a bit by bit, sector by sector copy. It's going to copy deleted files. It's going to copy slack space. It's going to copy, things that your normal copy doesn't get. You're going to create a hash of the original, a hash of the copy. They look good. This is all the incident handler's job. Remember, there are two roles: the forensics, the analyst. The handler is dealing with all that chain of custody. Their job is maintaining that evidence. When the analyst, if you need to look at it, you go, here, take the copy. Give that to the analyst and let them go over that. So there might have been a question on using imaging tools versus, just a regular copy utility.
Larry, can I ask a question?
Please, Lewis. I was wondering where you were.
Still, I'm juggling a few other jobs at the same time. Very loosely, we use the word containment and isolation. What's the subtle difference?
Well, basically, if somebody had a virus and you didn't want it to spread, you put them in a room and say, all right, they're under quarantine. Nobody go in that room. It's the same with the machine. And then the way you would do that is pull the network cable or something. You might, in some cases, say, power that sucker down, whatever it is. So containment it's different depending on the type of attack and the issue in hand. But you're basically saying, in a computer, don't let it talk to anybody. Because very commonly somebody clicks on a phishing attack. The phishing attack goes through the firewall. It's allowed because it's on the inside, right? The phishing attack worked because we didn't have what we were supposed to have, digitally signed mail, so we can't really authenticate people properly in email. We still can't figure this out yet. Well, we can figure it out, but it's not out. Blockchain with PGP. All right, so now email is the vulnerability. You click on it, your firewalls just assume, well, if somebody on the inside requested it, it's allowed out. And when somebody comes in, you've been asked for. Yeah, we were told to watch out for you. Come on in. So now the malware is allowed back in, And in a simple environment, if you don't have today's endpoint or extended detection and response tools, because today they all know how to stop that. But let's assume they didn't. It goes back to the user's machine and it starts running. Well, what's it going to do? What do you think most malware does? Start asking, now that I'm inside, what do you guys do? What do you guys do? Hey, where's the payroll server? They start looking around. They start talking to other machines on the network. They start sending, SYNs to different ports that shouldn't be there, whatever. And so you want to stop that. So when a machine is infected, one of the first things your endpoint security devices automate for you now is to disconnect it and isolate it from the network. Sometimes my wife has to go to the console and go, oh, I had to cut him off. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thanks.
You're very welcome. Yeah, you just want to stop it from spreading. All right, do a couple more. Actually, I broke on a weird time. I think we have to just go to the end here. Let's just finish this up. No more breaks. I have to logically figure out my break schedule again. I thought I had it figured out here, but so detect and analyze. Again, we detected a problem. My smoke detector went off, whatever it is. I have to figure out what it is, whether I have IDSs and logs on workstations, all types of detective controls. And a lot of times what you detect is not like, hey, I'm an attacker. It's like, the network keep running. Why am I getting these weird updates? Whatever. I think you guys have been around for a while and know even beginners should know that your computer just acts funny. And sometimes it's nothing wrong. You realize, oh no, it's Dropbox updating, whatever. But we do have to classify not just the types of incidents, but the types of machines. I'm not going to treat Bob's whatever company phone the way I do a mail server. So you have to create a grid, of some type of spreadsheet of these are the types of machines we have. These are the types of incidents, whatever, a denial of service, a backdoor, a botnet, ransomware, whatever. And then this is what I'll do if a desktop, gets whatever, a ransomware attack, something like that. When you go to a hospital, you don't just walk in and say, all right, next, right? You go in and it's like they size you up. Well, what's going on here? It's like his chest pains, bring him right in. What'd you do? I cut my knee, so there's different ways they have to sort out. Now they'd like to bring you in. They'd like, come on in. We got beds for everybody, but they don't have beds for everybody. Please remember that you're going to have very limited resources. And due to that, limited resources require triage. And you're going to sort out and prioritize. Prioritize. Well, we lost a lot of time in this class, just Larry spelling. I'm not even going to try it. I'm just going to bother. Larry can't spell. But you're going to sort out and prioritize, just like in a hospital. We can't treat everybody. I don't have a hospital bed for everybody. We're going to prioritize things. Figure out what do we have to deal with first. And again, the containment is I might have to just stop the spread somehow. Maybe I pull the network cable. Maybe I power it down. It depends on the type of attack and the type of machine. Long-term containment might be needed. It's like, no, just take that offline until we figure it out. And there's all kinds of ways to do it. I'm personally a big fan of network access controls. That can isolate from, we'll call it a switch. From a switch. So we just took you off the network right there. That's good stuff. Eradicate. I remove the malware. I fix the vulnerability. I recover. I get things back up. And now my salespeople are selling again. And I want to make sure that that's true. Is everything still working? Do we get that right? Run another hash on that thing, whatever. And then we figure out what really happened here. And again, the root cause is not necessarily that it was unpatched. It was that you shouldn't even be using these systems for that purpose anyway, or whatever. And then you have to do your reports and you have to update, get better. Lessons learned. Don't do that again. During the incident, communication is very tough. You have to have, maybe the phone lines went down. You're worried that they might be sniffing on this line, so you have all your emergency communications. And this is true with anything, this is true in any disaster too. In 9/11, the phones were down. It was hard to get a phone. So it was hard to notify anybody. And of course you have to notify our breach notification. And for CISSPs out there, we saw 72 hours for GDPR, right? All right. So the key takeaway really for incident response is that it's dealing with man-made intentional threats that could be the insider threat. They still show up on tests. But in real world, I find very few people have time to deal with the insider threat. Not always. I mean, I have people in forensics, and it's usually a sales rep. It's usually a sales rep that they're having a problem with. I don't know what's wrong with those people. Why are they so? But anyway, the overall thing, our goal is not to catch bad guys. We're trying to just keep things running. And a lesson on that reminds me of a very important lesson in my mom and her love of nature and everything. When I was a little kid, there was a commercial for Raid bug spray. Let's see if we can get this. Pretty funny. It was traumatic for me. Raid bug spray. And it was images, 1960s ad. Yes, Larry's old. They had this like superhero guy. This guy, house and garden killer. He kills all kinds of, and you know how he killed them? He kills bugs dead. My mom bought some and she stuck it under the cabinet and I saw her put it there. And I decided the next morning I was going to be a superhero. I'm going to take this outside and I'm going to kill me some bugs. Come on. We'll go out. And I go outside with my buddy, Richie Glasgow, and we're spraying. I'm getting emotional now. My mom comes out crying. I said, what? I'm killing Larry. These ants are in their home. This is their house. They're God's children too. And I said, well, I start crying. She's crying. She said, if they're in our house, they don't belong here. So I was out there trying to, be a good guy. And she let me off with something that then later on she teased me. She says, Larry, it's okay. I start crying. She goes, you had the best intentions. And then all my life I'd hear her say, and the road to hell is paved with the best intentions. So again, we're here to keep the business running. We're not trying to go out there and catch bad guys. And we have some time. So we're going to do some questions on this. What do you guys think? Oh, well, I still got another slide here. I still got to summarize business continuity. All right, so it's an integrated thing. Keep these teams talking to each other whenever possible. And again, overall, we're just trying to keep things running regardless. I don't want an excuse. One way or the other, we keep moving. One of my favorite lines my Marines always said, you chart a course like a captain of a ship. We're going to go this way. This is our goal. We have a map. The risks are here. We're going to avoid them. And something that's not on that map happens. And you improvise, adapt, and overcome. And my kids have that ingrained in their brain, and it's all I have to do is, well, I know, but I was out to dinner with my daughter and her new boyfriend, actually a year old, and he was new to that. And I said, well, you know what to do. You improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I said it naturally. My kids were there, and he just started chuckling. He goes, that sounds like a, and I was like, oh, you didn't tell him? Improvise, adapt, and overcome. All right, so let's improvise, adapt, and let's do some.
Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, I want to do some. You have some exercises, don't you, Arpita?
Yeah, let's finish with this first, Larry.
Okay. Yeah, I want to do some questions here, and I'm going to try Meta. We're going to exploit with now. If you don't know, Meta made a really neat forward thing in AI, in that unlike I love that it's called open AI, but it's not open. It's just a marketing term. Can I see your source code? No. That's not open. Gemini, not open. Claude, not open. Meta's open. They'll show you the source code. That's great. But the other side of it to get rid of bias is to be decentralized. It is not decentralized. It's running on their computers. So it's close. It's the next step. Paste, and I have domain 2 dot anything. Let's see how it runs. Well, that's a small font. Can I? There's an old man. I can't see that. Can I hide my sidebar? Yeah, there we go. Your organization's security team discovers a malicious email campaign targeting employees. The emails contain links to phishing websites designed to harvest login credentials. What would be the most effective immediate response? Block all emails from the sender's domain? Conduct a thorough investigation before taking action? Send a company-wide alert warning employees about the phishing campaign? Require all employees to change their passwords immediately? My chat. I see an A. I see a couple A's. Probably the best answer, huh? Probably the best answer. The sender's domain. It'd be a shame if the domain was Gmail. I block everything from Gmail. I would like to block it from their account. It discovers its campaign targeting employees. It contains links designed to. So has any breach happened? I personally like this. If there was a breach, I might
Yeah,
want to do
me
something.
too, see. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this is a domain, and the domain could be Yahoo. Yahoo.com is a domain. That seems a little tricky. I'm going to say C. I think it's C. Though I should go with the students' answers and see what they say. But again, we get to argue and get smarter. So let's see. It is C. And let's see why. Another point is they're usually spoofing their name anyway. So that domain was probably not even the real domain. And I didn't even think of that one. Yeah. Barsley, you do want to investigate, but it's not the immediate thing. Yeah. Does that make sense, everybody? Why that's probably the least impact, the best first assessment, first thing? Okay. All right, 2. Which security principle is primarily concerned? Wait a minute, this isn't business continuity. Please ensure questions are from domain 2. And maybe it needs a hint. Business continuity. And I'll remind them that's DR and IR. This is how you talk to these guys. Okay, that's a little bit better. Your organization experiences severe ransomware attack. Oh, so now we know in our detection and response, we don't have to analyze it. We know what happened, right? Encrypting critical business data. The response team must decide on the next steps. What should be the primary consideration when determining whether to pay the ransom or attempt to recover? Wow, this is a tricky question. I think it's fair, very appropriate, very similar to the type of thing they would ask in format and everything. Another guidance from my mother. There's no honor among thieves. Just because they said you'll get your data back doesn't mean you're going to get your data back. That was her line. There's no honor among thieves. And that would lead me to A, thinking that, yeah, but I'm assuming they're going to give me my data. D is nice. I'd like to see better. Are my backups already good? Because if my backups are good, I ain't giving you a nickel. But that could lead to D. This is a tricky one.
But it's possible that you might take longer to restore from your backup, but you wouldn't still have to pay those guys. So it could take longer as long as you're able to. So I think I
So
like C.
C is better. Let's try it. I like that too. There we go. When facing with the tears, this ensures the backups are not compromised. Good. Why the other one? Such a loss from downtime. Financial impact is important, but backup integrity is more. Well, the real thing is my mom's line is you can't trust that ransomware guys are going to give you back. With regards to ransomware, with regards to ransomware attacks, what percentage who pay percentage of those who pay get their data back? Oh, they're kind of 50 to 70. I heard 50 is the number my vendors like to tell me. So, but it's not 100. Like my mom said, there's no honor among thieves. You cannot trust the thief. The last thing I want to do is depend on them. All right, let's try 3. What business continuity planning component identifies critical business processes and their potential impact on organizations? Oh, now we get an easy one. And we're realizing everybody's doing it. That's the BIA. The hardest part. The key to a proper business continuity plan. Yes, 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 yes. A severe hurricane is forecasted to hit your organization's data center location. The disaster recovery team must activate the emergency response plan. What should be the primary objective when declaring a disaster and invoking the, oh, I should use that. That disaster declaration, by the way, is an expensive term on a CISSP exam. That means you called your alternate provider and go, hey, you know that how we pay like whatever, $500 a month to retain an alternate site with you? Yeah, we got to move in. I'm declaring a disaster. So it's going to be now $1,000 a day? Okay. So be careful. And invoking the plan. But what is the... that looks like the primary objective everywhere there. Thank you. Yeah. I think you hit it. Anybody else like something besides C? Yeah, it looks like C's got it. Minimize. We want to minimize. That's the whole point. I want to, if it, didn't want it to go down, but if it did go down, I want it to come back up as quick as possible. C. Next question. What term describes the maximum acceptable time frame for restoring critical business operations after our time? We know this one too. The old recovery time objective, which is less than the maximum tolerable downtime. Yes, it should be alpha. I estimate, and this kind of reminds me of like repair schedules. It's like they allocate that thing should be fixed within 45 minutes, you know. Whoops, no, 1A. Your organization's data center experiences a major flood, destroying critical hardware, critical infrastructure. Oh, I didn't say hardware, sorry. The disaster recovery team must execute the contingency plan. What should be the primary consideration when selecting it? It's a little late in the game, huh? You should have had this plan. You're going to select an alternate site after it experienced the flood? Well, assuming that. So out of context here, just in case, it should be you're planning just in case. Proximity to the affected data center. Well, that's that if it's close, it's easy to get my people there, but it might also be affected by the same flood. You know, so you definitely want it to be far enough away to not be affected by the same disaster, whatever that is. You know, availability of skilled people are nice. Compliance with regulatory requirements always important. Never want to break the law. Geographic diversity, so it's not affected by the same disaster and that all that data is redundantly there, seems like the best. Yeah. I think D is the best answer to this question. Yeah, we don't want to be affected by the same disaster yet. And there we go. Okay.
Larry,
Yeah.
Quick call out. Watch out for those options where you have something and something, but the second part of that answer is wrong.
Oh, that's so funny. And it's so true. It's so true where it'll say all this, and this, and then at the end of it, like if this were the answer, and blah, blah, you're like, well, all this was good, but not that part, then you lost me. And for people who just read really quick and don't let you finish, the type of person that talks over your sentence, that person's going to miss that question. What document outlines procedures for responding to and managing disruptions, ensuring business continuity? Well, this is debatable. Unless you just want me to pick the easy one. I'm going to argue with him either way at the end of this. No one? I think it's safe to say that it's not this subset of incident response or disaster recovery because you said business continuity. To me, how more that basically says it. Yeah, but it's officially called a crisis management plan, Larry.
But again,
Well-
it depends on the enterprise, how mature they are. So some they call it BCP, then everything they summarize disaster recovery plan, which includes everything. So it depends on the maturity of the organization.
Well, no, we should definitely not do that. NIST clearly says the disaster recovery plan is part of disruptions. But if the disruption was man-made intentional, that's not the plan we're using. We're going to use the incident response. But both of these fall under the business continuity plan, regardless. So it can't be B or C. But why can't it be called D at your company? Why can't you call it A or D? So I think, and whatever answer, I'm going to say A, but I'm going to say, why can't I just call it D? And if it says no, it's D. Back on question 7. I disagree with your assumption that, and here's oh, that's not what I want to do. Control V. Are in the related DER or plans per SP 800-3034. Therefore, I argue both A and D are correct. I do read about it. Thank you. That's what I'm known for. Provides that business code is the high level framework. Okay, therefore, are correct answers. I'll reconsider. All right, then. That's all I wanted to know. In case any of my students got the wrong answer. On the real test, we can't do that. But again, they've tested them with other people before. These have not. This was just generated on the fly. All right. A critical software application experiences a catastrophic failure, impacting business operations. The IT team must execute the disaster recovery plan. What should be the primary objective when conducting a post-incident review? And you got, and they obviously think root cause belongs there too, doesn't it? I think that we let everybody read. I don't know that everyone read there, but I think you're. D is the overall objective of the process of business continuity, but this says what is the primary objective when conducting the post-incident review. So let's remember to make sure that your answer addresses the post-incident review. Does that make sense? Satish said that was. Saksham,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
So I think
Definitely see.
yeah,
Analyzing the root cause and improving recovery procedures.
probably C is better in that case, yeah. We don't want lessons learned. Let's make sure we don't hit that cliff again. The root cause is a cliff under the water, right near our target goal of where we want to go. Well, let's put that on a
Appreciate.
map. What's that? Oh, you already read ahead?
Sorry.
No, no problem. No problem. I'm glad to have people engaged. That's wonderful. What term describes the process of regularly testing and updating business continuity plans to ensure plan effectiveness? You know, why are any of these, three of these look right? I mean, B certainly, I don't know why you can't argue B is right. I bet you that's not what they want. Maybe it is, who knows? I thought they wanted, because of the word plan, I would call that plan maintenance. That's how I look. The overall goal is continuous improvement. But the process of testing and updating the plan is called plan maintenance. That's to me what it's called. All right, I'll go out on a limb. I said that. But why not A? I mean, why not B? It's a broader concept that encompasses plan maintenance, but it's all about overall. Okay, I can see it. But if you picked it again on the real in an ISO 17024 exam, if 20% of the people picked that, they're going to rate that as being that type of credit. All right. Last question. Your organization experiences a significant merger, acquiring a new company with distinct business operations. What should be the primary consideration when integrating the acquired company's business continuity plan? Boy, it's hard to argue with that, huh? Yeah, better be D. He did it. He did it. Awesome. All right, we got like 20 minutes or so. Let me hand it over to Arpita. Do you have something you want to share?
Yes, Larry, I'm going to share the exercise in the chat, and then everybody can just give it a read, and then we can regroup in a few minutes.
So how long should we give them? 10 minutes? 5?
Yeah, 10 minutes sounds reasonable.
10 minutes.
I have to just reopen, so give me 1 second.
You got it.
I
And I did give you the right to share, right? Sometimes I forget that stuff.
Yeah, I do have the right to share. I was just going to send the Dropbox link.
Oh, in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is for incident response. It's not a real case study, but an interesting one. So let me know if you have any issues accessing it.
Did you paste the link?
It just did. Oh, sorry.
I didn't see that.
I didn't do it to you.
Yeah, I can see that now.
We can start a timer.
Well, I could share it too. I opened it up.
Okay.
Oh, but you have to read through the whole thing. Okay, yeah, it's so you can scroll down. That is I'm listening here. I just didn't feel like being on the screen.
All right. That's interesting music then. I hope everybody had a chance to read through it. Does anyone need more time?
I think that's from the Hunger Games, my wife and my younger daughter love. So I've been in the movie with that.
Oh, okay.
Dad may have fallen asleep. I've been known to.
All right. Any volunteers? What's your take on
And
the
you have
case
to close that timer actually, or else it's going to keep counting down, and we see that.
going? Okay, got it. Thanks.
Oh,
All right.
am I recording? Shoot. Oh, I recorded through that entire break. Well, for those of you watching the video, the recording, welcome back.
So this is pretty typical of, what happens when there is a security incident or a data breach. Just curious to get your thoughts and inputs on what else you might think is useful.
As what if I think like to prevent the future breaches, the company should adopt a multi-layered security strategy and technological solutions like automated patch management systems, intrusion detection, and preventions. Other than that, like network segmentation can also reduce the vulnerabilities and detect threats earlier. And at the same time, while employee training is also mandatory, where employee must be trained on for phishing awareness and incident responses is also the crucial to minimize the human error, right? Uh,
That's a
also,
really
yeah.
the key here is preventive measures, and Larry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but security awareness trainings they really fall under preventive administrative controls, right? Sorry, you're on mute.
They are administrative, and they certainly can be, but they're not only preventive, of course, because we give people training and awareness on what to do after how to detect. But when it comes to social engineering, almost all attacks start with it. The only preventive measures we have are training and awareness. It's the only real good preventive measure. So that's the train of thought. Yeah.
As far as data breach is concerned, I think using DLP solutions is also useful. I'm not sure in the context of the CC exam how deep you need to go into DLP, but
It's a technology they should know. And I'm glad you brought it up. It's something we should bring up. So, assuming that you guys are beginners, and I know that not everybody is, I'm sorry, sexy. You obviously have quite a bit of background. Saksham, thank you so much for your contribution. And I know Parvati and Cliff have some experience, but I have to assume little. So when one of the responses or preventive controls we have are data loss prevention systems, users sometimes unknowingly post things on whatever LinkedIn, Facebook, social media, and it's like, hey, that wasn't supposed to be out there. So back on yesterday when we classified our data, we classified for things like, oh, this is for internal use only. There's a term used like in training AI, labeling. We label that data with the classification. So now we can have these technologies that they run on your machine. They do it like a man in the middle, an encryption man in the middle. So if somebody's going to LinkedIn or Facebook, even though that's encrypted, your data loss prevention goes, let me see that first. And it's running on your machine, and it looks at it, goes, this doesn't go out there. And it'll stop it from going out. So it's a data loss prevention system. It's one of the best modern tools we have to prevent users from accidentally sharing stuff. And it requires that we classify our data and that classification is on the label. Our data has to be labeled. Thank you, Arpita. It's I don't have it anywhere else in this presentation, and I know it's on the exam.
So the last question there, discuss the role of employee training versus implementing IDS. Yes, for social engineering, training is the best way when I compare with that. But again, training, how strictly they are tracking, how many are taking, all those things are also really important. Um, you know, most of the companies, after they patch and updates and all, they give 3 days or 4 days, whatever their policy is, to reboot their machines and stuff. If not, then automatically it shuts down the machine. So I have seen, especially in Citibank, a lot of users complain, oh, I'm presenting this, so my Zoom, my machine, everything shut off. I'm like, yeah, because you were given 3 days time, you didn't do it. That's why your machine is automatically shutting your system down. Why I have to do it? So I have to spend 4 hours explaining them why they have to shut down. So again, it depends. There's no particular way of tracking these kind of things. That's why a lot of managers, they need to offlate, make sure their team is doing all these trainings. Otherwise, they be penalized or something against their performance. So yeah.
I love it. You sound like my wife. But I do have to back off and argue for the children's sake. Mom, why do I have to clean my room and you're yelling at them?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I want to say, for my user's sake, whether it's my children or it's my salespeople, sometimes it's a pain in the butt telling people, oh, and there's another thing you got to remember. And you got to remember to do this from now on. And every time you add a process step to someone's job, I came here to sell, not to become an expert in security or whatever. And that's a valid concern. There's a right size. I don't want to say, look, everybody has to learn to brush their own teeth or something like that. But I do want to try to automate whenever possible. So what you did is you automated it, but with a warning. Hey, you got 3 days. And I like it. It's a very reasonable approach.
Hello, can I say something?
No, I'm sick of you, Lewis. Please do say so.
My take is defense in depth. That's something the company would benefit from, using defense in depth. The breach of the virus could be contained.
That would be their like guiding principles to choose the type of controls that they feel are appropriate. And I think I would tie it back to the first domain that we covered yesterday. Like, you could do a million different things, but just because you can do them doesn't necessarily mean you should do them, because they all have to be considered in the context of, like, what is the acceptable risk level? What is the cost benefit for applying these controls? What is mandatory by regulation? What is mandatory based on the business function? So of course, like, this is a very oversimplified example. And there are so many more layers to this, but I guess the larger takeaway is to make sure that you are able to understand what the different types of measures are, what are preventive, what are detective. I would say IDS is detective and not preventive, but IPS would be preventive. So it's just important to understand that no one control is sufficient. But I know that, and Larry, you can correct me, but ISC2 places a huge amount of importance on security training and awareness. So
Oh, that's what they do.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That's their market. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's
So
true. Remember back when I was doing what do we secure? We secure the company, the ship. We secure the technology on the ship, right? All of our computers. But we also have to secure the people, and they certify. It's like, where did this navigator come from? Isn't he just your brother-in-law? And does he know what he's doing? So absolutely. And I said the first step in any development life cycle is who? Well, if the people are wrong, nothing works. No, the people have to be trained.
I just want to quickly touch on Saksham. You mentioned network segmentation. Larry, are we talking about that on the network course?
We are going to cover some of that. Absolutely. On day 4. Yeah.
Okay, and that was a really good answer as well. And we'll talk more about it later. But yeah, any other inputs, thoughts, comments?
Can I always have something to say, but I wanted to tail off of Lewis, because Lewis, defense in depth is the right answer on so many simple levels. And Arpita, you said you got to make sure the depth means that, like, you got to spend 1,000,000 controls and they're all in prevention. You had no detection or response. So it has to be balanced with it that, but it's also defense in depth that we have administrative, technical, and physical controls. So I noticed a lot of very simple questions where I was like, oh, but all you have is whatever authentication, but you didn't have authorization or something like that. So the very important basic thing is to have defense in depth. I thank you very much, Lewis, for bringing it up.
Not at all, Larry.
Arpita, before I see you're getting some distractions there, but we're closing up, right? Do you want to say any closing words?
No, I just would like to say thank you for this amazing session, Larry. Always so
You
much
too,
to
you
learn,
too.
you, and you crack me up. So it's good I'm off with you because I'm laughing. And
Well,
thanks.
good. I was told that my very early in my teaching career, I was at IBM, and my boss sat in a class with me, and I joked around a lot as a student, and we got in a sidetrack. And the teacher, my boss is apologizing to the teacher. The teacher goes, "No, he's keeping people awake." It was a night class, an evening class. He goes, "Are you kidding? You should be a teacher." So the hardest job is so cool. Oh, you're very welcome, Ezekiel. Thank you very much.
Thanks to the participants. I think you're a great class and so engaged, and it's always fun to have an audience that wants to listen and participate. So
Yes, Saksham, you had some great contributions there. I thank you. I think I don't remember meeting you before, some of the other people I've met before, but thank you. Keep it up. I love it.
Yeah, actually, it's my first class with you, and
Oh,
yeah,
cool. All right. It's not just my bad memory this time. Who didn't remember a former student?
no, it's not your fault.
Oh, I should stop the recording. Hold on.